Trauma series here on Time Eternal. I'm so grateful for all of you who join me in the quest to find meaning in time, eternity, and the faith, and sometimes trauma in between. If this series is beneficial for you, please help me spread the word by sharing it with your networks online and in real life. It helps spread awareness about the reality of trauma and the needs of trauma survivors in our parishes and communities. And it may help folks actively dealing with trauma find meaning, community, and encouragement in their struggle. Learn more about my trauma-informed coaching services at NicoleRokas.com/coaching. That's Nicole Rokas, ROCCAS.com/coaching. Otherwise, you can always find me on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at Nicole Rokas, where I keep the conversation about these podcast episodes going through images, discussion questions, and resources. This podcast is hosted and produced by Ancient Faith Radio. So if you appreciate the content that AFR provides, including podcasts like this one, please consider assisting the ministry with a gift of your own. Donate at ancientfaith.com/support. And once again, thank you so much for showing up today, mind, body, and soul. And until next time, may God teach us to number our days aright, that our hearts may be bound with wisdom. Thank you, and God bless.
Linking the ancient Christian faith with modern technology. You're listening to internet-based Ancient Faith Radio.
It's time now for Stewardship Calling with your host, Bill Marianes. Bill is a stewardship evangelist whose Stewardship Calling ministry is focused on helping people, parishes, and Christian organizations discover and live their stewardship callings and embrace true stewardship and generosity so that they may have a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ. Here's Bill.
Christ Orthodox Church is about 1,989 years old this year. But a relatively short 100 years ago, the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America was organized here in the United States. And what 100 years it has been. For over a century now, the GOA has brought people closer to Christ in a wide variety of ways, but in the meantime, it's survived depressions and wars and social upheavals and natural and man-made disasters and societal pressures and changes of all kinds that, frankly, never could have been imagined during Christ's time. So celebrating a centennial allows us to acknowledge the contributions of those brave and faithful pioneers that many, many years ago preceded us, and at the same time to look forward to the next 100 years of Orthodoxy in America and beyond. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to Stewardship Calling and the first Wednesday series on Ancient Faith Radio. This is Bill Marianes from stewardshipcalling.com and Orthodox Ministry Services, coming to you live not from my Stewardship Calling Ancient Faith Radio studio on the shores of beautiful Lake Lanier, where we normally broadcast from. Tonight, I'm actually coming to you live from the Marriott Marquis in downtown Manhattan, New York, the Big Apple. We are live here in New York for the 100th anniversary of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese and its bicentennial Clergy-Laity Congress. And I'm here with the CEO of Ancient Faith Radio, none other than the amazing John Maddox, who came all the way up here so that we could broadcast live. And we're going to have a cavalcade of people coming through here, some of whom you know and some of people who have been on programs before, and some of you may not know, but you should know as a result of this. You see, because my brothers and sisters, I have a simple calling, that you have been called by your Creator to a personal calling, a reason to your life and a reason for your life, something you need to do with all of the gifts God has given you, which is why I call it your stewardship calling. And St. Paul repeatedly makes it crystal clear to those Ephesians who seem to have trouble remembering that they all had a stewardship calling, even in chapter 4, verse 1, where he said that, I beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you've been called. Now, until 2017, by day, I was blessed to be a partner in two great international law firms of 1,100 lawyers each, where I served in management. But my calling, my personal calling, my stewardship calling, is to be a stewardship calling evangelist. And I hope that I can help people and parishes discover and live their stewardship callings so that they can find a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ as we practice Christ's great commandment to love one another, his great charge to serve one another, and his great commission to go and make disciples of all nations. So welcome to that journey. Now, this program and a lot of other helpful tools and information about effective churches and stewardship and strategic planning can be found at my always free website, stewardshipcalling.com, and you can reach me at bill@stewardshipcalling.com. And to our listeners tonight, even though we're up here in New York, New York, we want you to know that the studio is alive and well in Chesterton, Indiana, and we'll be welcoming your calls by calling and interacting with us and our 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, and who knows how many special guests we're going to have today. But you can call in at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. So by all means, feel free to call in. Now, we're going to not ease into this wonderful Centennial celebration. We're going to go full on. We're turning the fire hoses on. We're coming at you live and strong with two of the strongest voices of Orthodoxy, two of the most faithful people that have been broadcasting and taking the message that of Jesus Christ's love for all of us to so many people for so long. So it's my great pleasure to introduce my original broadcast partner, the guy who got me started in this mess after John Maddox twisted my arm on it, Father Barnabas Powell from Saints Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene in beautiful Cumming, Georgia, on the other side of Lake Lanier, and none other than Stephen Christoforou, the director of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese Y2AM ministry, which is our calculus and math ministry. No, actually, it's the youth and young adults ministry. So anyway, welcome, Father Barnabas, and welcome, Stephen, to Stewardship Calling live from New York on Ancient Faith Radio.
And I'm up here way above the Mason-Dixon line, and it is absolutely wonderful. I'm having a great time, Bill.
Did you need your passport when you came over here?
Well, but they made me leave my musket at home.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't bring the musket, but that's okay. But it's actually a joy to be back on the radio with you. This feels this is new. We're in the hotel.
I know,
but it does feel familiar being you on the air together, and it's great to have Steve next to me. Man.
I know.
Cool.
One of the fun things that y'all don't know is that when we first started, Father Barnabas had his Ancient Faith Radio studio in Cumming, Georgia.
Yeah.
And I used to drive across the lake to his house and intrude on the sanctity of his evenings.
But you brought wine.
I did bring wine. But we never drank it on the air. I just want you to know we were totally sober.
And that's the story we're sticking to.
You got that right. You got that right. So,
hard to pick up a wink on the radio.
Yeah. Well, Christoforou, the ministries that you do are mostly visual and graphic. So this is a little hard for you to be on radio where you don't, it doesn't matter. And by the way, he looks very good. He's still wearing a tie. He's closely cropped his beard. He's combed his hair. So
fake news.
No. So for those of you that are just wondering, he's still looking like he should be on air, but this, on TV, but this is just radio.
Well, I have a face for radio, so it's okay.
As do I. So here we are.
How am I going to talk with my hands on the radio? I don't know what to do with myself.
I'm still waiting on. Hi, everybody. This is Steve.
Yeah.
All right. It's in my contract.
In the contract.
Hey, everybody. This is Steve, and we're in my hometown. We're in my hometown.
I know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were from New York.
I'm from New York. I'm not Manhattan, but I am from New York. I'm from Queens. Yeah.
What do you mean you didn't know he's from New York?
I knew he was from up in the frozen tundra, but I didn't know it was actually New York.
I've spent a lifetime trying to work on this non-regional dialect.
Well, you did great.
You have done a great job.
I failed miserably. So
yeah, those beat treats would not have been as successful if you came out sounding like.
What's going on here?
I'm walking here, kids. Come on.
Here.
That's right.
I hit a taxi cab yesterday on Times Square. Hey, I'm walking here.
There you go. You can tell we have not. I want everybody to know we have not started drinking any wine. John Maddox is sitting right next to us, and he would not allow us to open up any alcohol.
Once again, you can't see a wink on the radio.
Right. It's exactly right. So here we are at the 100th anniversary.
This is pretty cool.
Of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese. Yeah. And to be sure, we heard about a parish that actually got started years earlier, but in terms of the formal formation of the Archdiocese.
That's right.
And Steve, you've not worked for the Archdiocese for the full 100 years, although maybe some days it seems like
feels that way sometimes.
Right? But just in the years that you've been there, kind of what are some of the things that you have seen? And what are some of the challenges you see in front of us, and what are some of the dreams that you hope to have?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think one thing that I've seen in my own life is a lot of change. Right. And I've seen I'll tell you this, for example. It's a story that I sometimes share. I grew up in New York. I did not realize that the Lord's Prayer came in English until I was about 13 years old.
Yep.
Which is, again, that's a very particular sort of experience, right? But I have seen the way that we have actually sort of begun to realize the fact that we are here at this particular time, here at this particular place, and this is our opportunity to really share the light of the gospel with the larger world. And that means media, that means creativity, and I mean, it's wonderful, right? You think that in the long long sort of like scope of church history, right? Like
the arc of the church.
Yeah. And yet so much has happened within not just the last 100 years, but even within the last decade, even, I would say. Right? As our roots get sort of more firmly established, as our feet are really under us, and we're prepared for the challenge that lies ahead.
Becoming an indigenous church right here in the United States. And it's really happening.
And the speed of it, I think, as your point is, has accelerated so much lately, hasn't it?
But I will tell you this, we have to stay cognizant of the fact that that's speeding it up. That's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing in the sense that it's good that we're accomplishing this, and this is what this needs to happen. But we also need to understand that that this can be whiplash for some folks, and so we have to stay cognizant of that. But it is fascinating that as we're sitting here, I'm sitting with two lifelong Orthodox, and I'm the convert Orthodox to Orthodox Christianity. And that's something that is continuing to grow in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese. The number of converts continue to expand. People who don't have that older connection to the Orthodox Christian faith. I mean, I think, Steve, some of the stuff that you've been doing on media has helped accelerate that. I mean, I remember doing a Be the Bee show with you and several other Be the Bee shows that have really opened up, especially as we've broadcast it now that we've got this wonderful gift of technology that we can. I mean, I'm sitting here. I remember John and I were talking before the program began about old radio stuff where you had to have a landline and screw off the receiver and hook up the gym clips to the receiver to get a remote show on. And now we've got this little box and it's doing all this wonderful stuff. What's been communicated from the Greek Orthodox faith is now going all over the world, places we would never have been able to go before.
Yeah, which is wild to think about.
It really is. It really is wild, which means it's also dangerous, which means it requires us a constant sense of humility and also a constant sense of repentance as well.
So wait, when you say it's dangerous, I mean, you use that word with intentionality.
Oh, yeah,
I want to make sure that people understand what do you mean by but
the problem is people think that dangerous equals bad, and that's not true.
That's why I'm
dangerous
trying to
doesn't equal bad.
Yeah,
dangerous doesn't equal bad. Dangerous equals reality.
Okay.
So it's like I heard a very wise man once say. He said, "What you want to be is you want to be a dangerous man. You want to be a dangerous man, but you want to be a dangerous man under control. Because if you've got a dangerous man that has got a grip on his soul and he's getting his passions tamed." That is an effective man. That's a man who has a vision and who is brave and fearless and runs into the lion's den, carrying the good news to the darkest places in the world. And frankly, that's what I'm seeing happen, Steve, with this explosion of technology. That's what I'm seeing happen in the stuff that we're doing with Faith Encourage Ministries, for heaven's sake, getting messages from all over the world. You've got that too.
100%.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, because I think listeners are always struggling with. We had a panel here at the Clergy-Laity, for those of you that were not here, about the use of technology and what it impacted on COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID. And you got the usual back and forth from people saying, "Oh, I don't know if it's a good thing that we were live streaming services and blah, 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 blah." But you two being the vanguards of using technologies to actually get the word out there.
Sure.
I would love to hear your perspectives on that and why and how you've been doing it and how you found it effective and how you avoid the negativity associated with it.
Yeah, which is a really great question. So this is something I've been thinking about, maybe a way to express this a little bit, right? Even maybe changing the word to not think about technology but media, right? Media, right? If you look at the Latin root, is this thing that is in the middle, right? A bridge can be in the middle or a wall can be in the middle.
That's a good way to look at it.
And I think that media has always been a part of the way that the church preaches, right? Like St. Paul sent letters, which were media, this thing between him and the community.
Sure.
But he wasn't sending individual Xeroxes to individual people, right? He was sending a letter to be read to the entire community with a person who carried the letter, explained the letter, etc., right? In this case, media was a bridge that was uniting him with these people that he spent time with and actually sort of spread the gospel, connecting them together as a community, right? Not a thing that was being consumed by individuals, but a thing that was allowing persons to come together in relationship. And that's where dangerous can be bad in this sense, right?
Yeah,
because media can be a thing that buys into this postmodern sense of us as individuals who are glued to our screens, glued to our devices.
Something I watch.
Right? Yeah. This thing that I consume. But I think this is the wonderful opportunity, and I think the trailblazing effect of ancient faith in particular, right? and also the way that like this ethos is coming out of the Archdiocese too, to look at this as media, not as a thing that plays into sort of individual consumerism, but a thing that brings us together as persons in community to really facilitate the Eucharistic gathering.
Amen. Well, I'll be honest with you, Bill. As a parish priest, we started recording our homilies and posting our homilies since 2012.
Yeah.
But we never broadcast the service. Never. And I'm one of those guys that...
I remember the arguments about that.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys that was very much against broadcasting the service. A couple of reasons why. Number one, I came from a world, in the evangelical Protestant world, where Christianity was something you watched on a stage.
Right.
And I converted away from that mindset. I wanted the fullness of the liturgy to be the fact that there's only one audience in the divine liturgy, and that's Lord Jesus Christ, and all of us are part of the ones doing the public service of the liturgy on behalf of the world to the Lord Jesus. So I refused until COVID hit. Right. And when COVID hit, I broke down and we streamed our services for the first time, and we're continuing to stream our services up until communion.
Right.
And then they put up a picture of people right and a little statement on the bottom saying the people are now receiving communion.
Yeah.
And this is the picture that's up there. We're not showing people because
that's awesome.
You can't take the Eucharist over the radio. You can't do it. You can't take it through the TV. You can't.
Scandalous.
I know, it's amazing.
Talk about dangerous, right?
but at the same time, again, dangerous not necessarily being good or bad, but when it is listen, any passion that becomes undisciplined takes us to the evil place, to darkness, and to slavery. Because the central message of our ancient Christian faith is that this is the medicine. Orthodox Christianity is the medicine that gives a man or a woman the spiritual tools to have their passions tamed, so that their passions are servants and not masters, so that you can be a full and complete human being by the grace of God in Jesus Christ. So that this wonderful technology that's happened, and frankly, we Orthodox were kind of we were bringing in the rear about that. We really weren't changing over to a lot of that stuff. I mean, I come from a world where the evangelical Protestant world, and John and I both, we came from the world where using media to spread the message,
like breathing.
Man, of course we're doing that.
Yeah.
When I first converted, I was having a hard time. I was going to say, well, maybe I can use some of my gifts for the Orthodox Church, and surely they've got tons and tons of media out there, and not so much.
You had to look for it for a while.
But it's a good thing that this is happening.
Yeah, and it's changing, right? So I was upstairs. They've got this really wonderful sort of museum exhibit on the 9th floor of the museum here,
beautiful.
Right? Which has a lot of like artifacts and things about the 100-year lifespan of the Archdiocese.
I haven't seen that. I got to go see that.
Because what did I see there?
What?
The Be the Bee logo, the Pop Culture Coffee Hour logo, that this media stuff is actually part now of the history of the Archdiocese.
History of the church, exactly.
And even to the extent of in the displays, and of course they had the traditional pictures and artifacts and stuff like that. Somebody had found the audio recording of the last service of Archbishop Athenagoras.
Oh, wow.
And they had a picture of him on an iPad, and you could put on headsets and you could listen to his last homily, right? And then
that's super cool.
Then you go to one screen, and there's a big screen with rotating media and all these different programs, the bees, and everything like that.
Yep.
And then on the other, did I say that wrong?
The bees, let us attend.
The bees. Okay. Well, that's yeah, that's right. Thank you very much. And then on the other side, I can just invite you just as easily. Cut their
Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody.
It's been nice knowing these guys, but they're gone.
Tip your waitress.
On the other end, there was a big, beautiful screen, and one of the things they did that I thought was so powerful is they researched when was the charter granted for each of the Orthodox churches.
Oh, wow.
Or Greek Orthodox churches. And you can scroll through it, and you can see by year the churches that are being chartered and growing and stuff like that. So that's a passive activity of taking data, but presenting it in a very approachable and engaging fashion.
That's great. That's fantastic. And it's a wonderful thing that's happening, but it also makes good sense that when we have, especially folks from the older generation, that they're going, wait a second, this is moving really pretty quick.
Yeah, it's hard.
But it's a wonderful balance if we'll listen to all the voices, to say, okay, here's a good way. We need to keep that in mind. At the same time, my daughters are upstairs right now consuming media on their little screens because that's what they're doing in the hotel room until they go off to their next event tonight. Right. That is the way young people are getting their information. And if the Orthodox Church doesn't show up in that world, then we communicate to our young people that the church is
not for
irrelevant.
Yeah, it's not for them.
And it's not true.
And Steve, you've seen that not only with your Bees the Bees, I've rebaptized it, by the way, your Bees the Bee ministries, but also the bee treats and things of that nature, right? So you've seen the impact that has had, but yet at the same time, you preach a balance there. So talk a little bit about the kind of balance that we need to bring for our young people as well as for those of us that are addicted to screens ourselves.
Yeah, 100. I mean, we did a Be the Bee episode, for example, about fasting from social media. Actually, not too long ago. That's cool. And so this again is
I should know that number, shouldn't I? I mean.
Yeah. No, I should know that number, I think.
Okay, all right, I think we can all do that.
Well, actually, just so you know, Father Barnabas and I actually did a Ancient Faith Radio Stewardship Calling live program on anti-social media, looking at the impact. Now, this was over a year ago. So I should know that thing, but it was over a year ago. So you're free from not giving us. All right, give us the upshot of that.
Yes. So this again is media. This thing in the middle. Is it a wall or is it a bridge? All right.
I love that metaphor.
That's great. It's perfect.
So you think about B2B, for example, right? So it's this media thing, right? It is this thing that is not meant for a kid to watch by him or herself. It is hopefully a thing that they watch in Sunday school or with parents or with other people, right, to facilitate communion and communication. And then what happens? Christian and I go in and we do a retreat in this community, and what's the first thing that I do with the kids? A silence workshop. We spend 20 minutes with them in stillness and silence, right? Teaching them how to actually pray.
That's amazing.
Because it's not about building a fan base. It's not about building notoriety or anything. It is this thing that is going to be a bridge that's going to bring us together to continue to sink deeper and deeper and deeper into the actual ministry.
How freaky is that for them? I mean, they're unprepared for that, right? I mean, that's got to be really challenging.
They're super unprepared for it, right? Which is interesting. And because we always sort of unpack it. What was that like to actually spend 20 minutes doing this? Oh, it's felt like forever, etc. But every now and again, you get these comments from somebody like, that is the first time that I have actually experienced peace, and I can't even remember how long.
Wow.
Right? Because we think about, again, this dark side of media, where we are constantly facing this pressure to perform, this pressure to put out a false self, and this rise of like stress and anxiety and depression for all these people who are sort of forced to be the actors in their own lives from a very, very young age.
Wow.
And so what is it, right, to not simply tell young people that this is the peace of God, but to show them the peace of God.
That's
right.
Is that the same kind of thing that I've heard with respect to camp, like when they have alone time with God?
Alone with God. Yeah, right? They do it all the time. Yeah.
So,
or the fact that they collect their cell phones when they get there, right? And that for a lot of camps, they'll do that 10 minutes of alone with God.
Yeah.
Right? Like these are the things, right? Like again, this can be this opportunity, this bridge into something deeper, this ever deepening thing.
And always remembering the point of all of this is to make sure that that we all remember this is about being connected to Jesus Christ. This is the message of normal orthodoxy. That's become a new buzzword that I'm using.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, that normal orthodoxy embraces the cosmic invitation from God the Father to become by grace what Christ is by nature. And whatever fosters that, whatever feeds that, whatever draws men and women to center their lives around Jesus Christ and get their identity from looking at the face of Jesus Christ. That's the real human. That's the solid human being. I'm going towards that. And that true north that it gets established in our lives because of the liturgical life of the church, the wisdom of the church, all of that needs to be communicated in a way that is accessible to the people who desperately need it the most. And that's what we have to do.
Yeah, but here's the thing that I just always want to say to you is that normal orthodoxy is a concept that's a brilliant concept, by the way. But I think that a vast number of cradle Orthodox don't know what that means.
Well,
right?
And I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
And
I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah, but and so
I'm still not quite sure I know what it means, but I'm looking at it.
But you're going to keep using that term, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll define it as we go.
Amen.
But I think it's important that you challenge us, all of us, from wherever we are, on our faith journey.
Yeah, amen. Well,
to take that next step, to take that deeper.
It's the reason why St. Isaac said, "This life has been given to you for repentance. Do not waste it on vain pursuits."
Right.
And so what I've seen happen as the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese has grown, it started out as this immigrant movement that came to the United States, and it was basically a way to minister to the immigrants that moved into the country.
Yes.
This is and that was its identity, and in some places it still is its identity.
Yeah.
But
regrettably.
But that's changing. It's changing. You've got to. I can only speak about my own parish, Saints Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene. 75% convert. There's a vast majority of people in Saint Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene who've never known another church. They've never known another priest, and that's a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, to watch as lifelong Orthodox have the fire of their faith kindled again in understanding the why behind all of this liturgical life and the why behind all of this practice. Because listen, we live in a culture that is diametrically opposed to the rhythm of life of the Orthodox faith. Mm. It's antithetical to modern man to think about saying no to himself, taking his cross and following Christ, and saying no, and saying instead of following your passions and feed your passions, we're saying no, tame your passions so that they will be servants and not masters.
And it was interesting. There was a long session today, and in one of the plenary session type things about, what is the new charter for the Archdiocese?
Right,
what could it look like? What could it contain? And things of that nature. And at the same time, I was hearing people struggling with this very same phenomenon that you're talking about.
Yeah, identity crisis. It really is.
It really was. I mean, you heard people talking about one thing and about the challenges and about the culture and stuff like that. And at the same time, there were those that were, casting the net back into the ancient history and trying to hang on.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and if they cast the net far back enough, that's fine, because, there was a day when the Orthodox faith turned the Roman Empire upside down and actually created whole nations in the whole world.
Right.
They created cultures and societies.
Yeah.
That's what normal Orthodoxy does.
And see, that's why I think it's important that as you continue to flesh out this definition of normal Orthodoxy, is that you share with people, what does that mean? When we talk about normal Orthodoxy, we're not necessarily talking about something that's temporally true today.
No, not at all. It's certainly not boring either, and it's really demanding. That's the reason why, if you don't know the why behind it, if you don't know why do all this, then all of this looks stupid. It looks like it's so much religiosity, and man, you really are. You're acting like faith ought to determine everything I do.
Right. Kinda, yeah. I'll take that.
As a matter of fact,
that'll be a yes.
Exactly.
Right. That. And so I want to go back to something you said earlier, because I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and I didn't write it down, but I'm going to write it down this time. When you talked about St. Paul's letters, and you talked about it being a bridge, would you say that again? Because I think that's really, really powerful.
Sure. So again, media, right? We were talking about technology, talking about media. Literally, the word means the thing in the middle, the thing in between, right? The opposite of immediate, right? The thing that has nothing in between. And I think one of our challenges to use media as Christians, not to simply use media as sort of American consumers, is to treat this thing in the middle as a bridge rather than a wall.
Amen.
Right? And again, because we live in a culture, right, to sort of build on what Father Barnabas was just saying, where we see the human being as an individual, right, an isolated individual that has been reduced to sort of a consumer, a thing that is glued to his or her screen, a thing that is constantly sort of consuming, purchasing, etc. But we are persons in relationship, built to have relationship with our Creator and each other.
Right.
That's why communion is the center of the church.
Yes.
Well, and one of the things that I think that I don't want anybody listening to miss this. And I'm gonna take license with history, which is always a dangerous thing to do. But you just had me think about the first time St. Paul wrote a letter, as opposed to talking to somebody. And I can envision somebody at that Clergy-Laity Congress saying, "We shouldn't be using this newfangled technology of letters. Exactly. We ought to just be talking to people." But in a real sense, that's what happened. He used a new medium to communicate. And it wasn't the medium that was good or bad. The medium was agnostic. It was just a delivery vehicle. Exactly. The message is what was good or bad, right?
That's it. Yeah.
And I think that's where we maybe need to be reminding ourselves that the battle we think we're fighting anew has been fought in perpetuity.
Yeah. Which is fair. I mean, I think that's true. The medium definitely is a tool. I will say that, I mean, maybe the ground is a little bit more shifted because there's more sort of dopamine that comes with the screen, that comes with the papyrus.
Absolutely.
That's
right?
really true.
But again, it is something
I don't know.
that can be back.
I've not measured. That's pretty good. More dopamine with the screen than papyrus. I've not seen that study. Do you have a study on dopamine versus papyrus?
Well, I think the dopamine goes down once the screen shows up.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I had this visual image of rolling out a papyrus and getting really excited about what it was saying.
It depends. If that's all there was, I'm sure that was it. Yeah, but I'm not quite sure once the printing press started.
Oh yeah.
Sake. I mean, the change that happened in the world. All books were handwritten before.
Right.
So I mean, this really is the history of the growth of this ability to communicate, and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But it's like a hammer, and I tell people this all the time. You know, media is like a hammer. It's neither good nor bad. You can build a Habitat for Humanity house with it, or you can bash somebody's skull in.
Sure.
But the hammer's not. The hammer is a neutral agent.
It's a tool.
And so if it's used by evil men, we got problems. But if it's used by good men, glory to God.
Yeah. And Lord knows what we're seeing is like this media, right, is bringing people to Christ.
Yep.
Right. And that's the wonderful thing. And we were talking about history earlier and the way things have changed during the course of the Archdiocese, right? One of the things that we've seen, talking about that too over the course of the last 100 years, is that we've seen that our sort of conception of ourselves, we no longer see ourselves as a diaspora. Right.
Right.
I mean, like one of the reasons why
Wait, explain that again, because I want to get my head around that.
Still keeps using around, but it really is. It's really not really the truth.
Not really, right?
Nobody's going back.
And that's precisely the thing, right? There were so many early communities that were structured upon the assumption that after I kind of spend a couple of years or decades in the coal mines, make up some money, I'm going back home to the old, right?
Of course.
These spread people are going to go back home. But then at some point we realize we're here.
This is home.
And we're here to stay, right? And it's time that we realize, like, this has to be an outpost of the kingdom.
Amen.
Right? These are our people, these are our communities, this is our nation. We have to figure out what it means now to actually, like, see ourselves as people who are planted here, not simply sojourners here for a short time to go back home.
So in that way, I think it's really important to make that distinction about what does it mean, because people, I don't want anybody to misconstrue what you're saying and saying, oh, well, he's saying we should cut all ties with whatever heritage we have.
No,
that's absolutely not the message.
Not at all.
But the whole point is, this is our home, and we make our home, and we bring with us the great things about our background, our lineage, our history, whatever.
Bill, I'm going to be honest. One of the things that drew me to Orthodoxy,
because I've been waiting for that.
Finally arriving. Finally. But one of the things that drew me to Orthodoxy was this communal memory that I loved because I didn't have it.
Communal memory.
A communal memory.
Describe that. Define that.
That stretches beyond just what happened last week. I always tell the story about this old Charles Schultz cartoon with Peanuts, and Charlie Brown walks by his sister writing something on the breakfast table, and she's writing a paper, and he says, "Oh, what are you doing?" She said, "Oh, I'm writing a paper for Sunday school." He said, "Oh, wow, what is it about?" She said, "It's about church history." And he said, "Wow, that's really interesting. Could I look at it?" And the last pane of the cartoon panel shows that she shows him the paper, and it says, "Our pastor was born in 1950."
Right.
For the vast majority of Americans, that's their idea of church history.
Yeah.
And what drew me to Orthodoxy was this beautiful connection all the way back to the apostles. And it wasn't just some kind of intellectual thing. It was an emotional, cultural thing that was really felt, and people got real emotional about, about events and things that happened long before they were ever born, and yet they felt it as if they were right there at it.
Yeah.
So and for me, that communicated that this Orthodox faith connects me in a very real way to real people whom I've never met, and then all of a sudden, all the icons started making sense, and venerating the icons all started making sense, because this is a real connection, and it's an affectionate connection.
Well, and learning the stories behind the saints is in and of itself. Not only is it history, but it's a living testimony. It's a living church.
That's the important thing, right? Because as Christians, like, our history is actually our future.
That's it.
Right? And we're able to look back hundreds of years, thousands of years, so that we can look forward into eternity.
Amen.
Right? The church is not simply valuable because it is old, but because it is the kingdom present
timeless.
now.
Yeah, it's timeless. Amen. But that connection gives me a perspective about time that is much broader than, is this going to fill my stomach today and satisfy me today and so on and so forth.
Yes.
No, I'm thinking about something vastly more cosmic and more beautiful. And one of the gifts that this media gives us, it gives us an opportunity to communicate that,
right.
However imperfectly, but it communicated that, and all of a sudden, people who have been kind of sensing, boy, there's really something missing here, and there's something that's not quite right, and all of a sudden they hear that they were meant for something much more cosmic than what they've been told, and all of a sudden, man, I'm interested.
Well, and this is one of the points that I think people miss sometimes, and then they make sometimes, and that is, if somebody's first searching and they realize, okay, my church was started in 1868 when somebody invented it, right?
Yeah.
And yet there's this guy Jesus, and he was 33. So what kind of happened in between, right? And the problem though is to introduce them to the Orthodox Church is like, can you imagine taking somebody who's never been in Orthodox Church to Holy Thursday services, the reading of the 12, but what the media allows for, what both of y'all are doing with Faith and Courage, with the Be the Bee and all the other activities, is to, without simplifying it, without dumbing it down, giving them bite-sized pieces that they can take, reflect, think about, pray about, embrace, and say, okay, now I'm ready for the next bite.
Yes. The last 2 Sundays at Saints R&I, we had people come to the church service that have never been in an Orthodox church service before. That's a normal thing.
I was going to say, that's nothing new for your church.
Yeah, it really isn't.
I know.
Nothing,
Glory to God.
And during coffee hour, we have a table dedicated for our guests. That's where I drink my coffee on Sundays, and I sit with them.
Wait. Will you remember this rest of the story? Because I got to trace one rabbit talk.
Oh, sure.
Go
ahead.
Okay.
No, sure.
So not only does he have this table, this like kingly table over there that says reserved for the priest and any newcomers.
Yes.
He sits there
it's
like
the
king.
It's the throne.
He sits
really
there like the
away.
king, and when he interviews, no, it's true. Steve, I'm not lying. He'll interview these new parishioners, right? And I can tell what's going on in his head. He's relating who in my parish would click with that person, is like that person, has that background.
Awesome.
And then he just like waves his hand at you and points at you and makes you come. So sometimes I've been summoned to the table. Now, I'm never permitted to drink coffee at the table.
No.
I have to take the new parishioner to another table. But again, I that is and by the way,
see, that's media again. That's a bridge. Right? That's a bridge.
That is a bridge. And this is a thing that I want other people to think about in your respective parishes. This is a great way to make your coffee hour a very engaging opportunity, because not only does the priest engage with the new people engage with some of the old people, and the old people are now welcoming them into community. Okay, now go back to your story.
Invariably, I'm sitting with these folks and I'm asking them questions, and reflect back to me. This is the first time you've ever seen the Divine Liturgy. And so, what are you seeing? Oh, I was fascinated by the beauty. I really was able to follow everything, but I was amazed that the people were singing together and all of this stuff, and it was really, really beautiful. And I said, so what's drawing you to this?
Yeah, great question.
Why are you being drawn to this? And to the person, they're saying, I want something substantial and meaningful in my life. There's a crisis of meaning that's going on. One of the things that we did with Faith and Courage Ministries is with the daily devotionals, and now a lot of it has gone on our YouTube channel for Faith and Courage TV, where we put our homilies up every week. We've been doing that for several years now, but more and more people. I get messages from Australia. Father, we use your homilies on Sunday afternoons to help the folks connect to the faith here in Australia. And very wonderful. It's fantastic. Romania, different messages, but right here in the United States and Canada, there are folks that are consuming the media all the time, and one of the things we keep saying is the reason why we're doing this media is to connect you to your local parish so that you can grow in the faith, because Orthodoxy is face-to-face communion and relationships.
All right, now I'm going to say something, but do not answer on the air unless the answer was yes. Okay. So in the big session, the big 4-hour session we had imagining the future of the charter and stuff like that in the Archdiocese, were you there when the person mentioned your name? Because it was really a very powerful moment. This parishioner comes out there and says, I'm from so-and-so from this community, and I was kind of remote and stuff like that. And I saw some of Father Barnabas Powell's stuff, And that brought me in there, and then that connect me, and now they're an active member of the church. Heck, they're even a delegate to this Clergy-Laity Congress. So that's exactly that is a perfect example.
That's a lousy story to tell. Don't tell that story again.
I'm telling it again. It's my program. You don't tell it on your program. I can do what the heck I want. I'm looking at Maddox over here and asking him if I can say that story again. But the point, it is a demonstration of the point you made, and that is this media allowed this man who was in a remote area to access something that was meaningful, that then put him on a search to find the parish closest to him that he could connect with.
Thanks be to God. I mean, that's what this stuff is supposed to do, and frankly, that's what we're all supposed to be doing. And whatever giftings that we have, and whatever ministry areas where, if you're working in an office, your life is supposed to be a media to help people connect to Jesus Christ, and regardless of what you're doing. And so thanks be to God that stuff happens, and it happens a lot, and I'm grateful to God.
Yeah, and so let me tell a story about the guy to your left and my right over here, right? So I'm at an Ancient Faith Radio podcasters, bloggers, writers conference, and I'd finished talking, and everybody was filing out of the room. And I'm sitting there talking to Steve, and these two young men who were somebody's kids, who was at the conference, John, came in, and they were trying to find their parent. And they looked over, and their jaws hit the ground, and they got really excited. And I thought, isn't that wonderful? People are paying attention. These young people are paying attention to my programming. They went right over to Steve, and I became a photographer. I actually had to take pictures of these kids with Steve because of the Be the Bee thing. So talk a little bit about those examples, and that is a true story. I don't know who those kids were, but talk a little bit, Steve, from your experience when you have those same experiences, when that neuron fires in that kid's head, when you see that connection. when you can actually start to see the Holy Spirit stirring them.
Yeah, that becomes an opportunity for redirection. Right? Because I'll never forget. So we're at Clergy-Laity right here. The first Clergy-Laity I was ever at was in 2014 in Philadelphia. And that's the first time a kid ever came up and asked me for my autograph.
Yep.
And to my undying shame, I gave the kid my autograph, right? Because I was like, oh, look at the kids, they're into it. But then I eventually realized, right, like I was looking at one of the Vasis icons, and there you have Christ in the middle, and there's Panagia pointing away from herself to Christ,
right.
And there's John the Baptist pointing away from himself towards Christ. Like, that is the point. Right. Like I always say, like, people sometimes talk about like celebrities and stuff in the church. Like, we do not use the C word in this household. People sometimes talk about fame. We do not use the F word in this household, right? If somebody is coming to one of us because they recognize us for whatever reason, it is to the glory of God.
That's the key.
It is not like, come here and become a disciple or whatever it is. You're part of my fan club. Like, you get down on your knee, you look this kid in the eye, and it's like, oh, what episode, did you watch that made a difference with you? Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your walk with Christ. It is an opportunity to redirect.
Amen.
Right? Because again, media, not putting up a wall to sort of stop them from getting to Christ, to have them focus on us. Keep it going.
The bridge. I mean, if people have not been paying attention to anything that's been said, and I hope you have, I mean, I think one of the key messages that both of you are repeating is that the media, the technology, the opportunities are all bridges to an opportunity to have a closer relationship with Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ is the center. And frankly, it's the reason why our community has grown to the point where we got to build a new building. We're going to do that kind of stuff. And all of those are good problems. They're wonderful problems. But all over the country, in parishes all over the country, people are coming to the church. It's interesting, and we've heard horror stories about folks leaving the church over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But the reality is there are a lot of bright spots in the Orthodox faith around the United States.
And to connect a dot even, right? So what is one of the things that happened over the course of the last couple of years, right? Pandemic, etc. A lot of people spent a lot more time online than they otherwise would have. And what happened? There was a lot of Orthodox Christian media that was there waiting for them.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like, oh, these people who had this hunger for a long period of time, it was there, it was ready for them, and it led them into these communities, and it led them to Christ.
It was a powerful moment for people to reconnect in a safe way to the ancient, and it's resulted in explosive growth in several places around.
Yeah, so
the bridges were there.
Yep.
And the bridges, that continuing metaphor of the bridge is really an important exercise here, because even the buildings that we're building are not building for the sake of building. I remember one time I went to our beloved Metropolitan Alexios. This is a long time ago, and I said, Your Eminence, I did a calculation, and in this past year, churches in your metropolis have built whatever the number, $40 million worth of new buildings. And he got that classical Greek expression of wisdom on his face, and he says, Vasily, I don't worry so much about what they build. I worry about what happens inside what they build.
Yeah,
and I thought,
amen.
what a powerful reminder. Yes, we have to have these beautiful sanctuaries and these beautiful facilities, but they are the bridge. They are the facilitation of people bringing close to Christ.
They're icons of paradise. It's one of the things that we've been really emphasizing about building the buildings. And we're building this building not to build a building, but to create an icon of paradise for the people of Cumming, Georgia, and Forsyth County, in our 20-minute radius. That's our Jerusalem. That's where we're focused. That's who we're called to Christianize and to Orthodoxize. And that's what's happening slowly but surely. And we're building an icon of paradise there so that we can facilitate men and women getting in relationship with Jesus Christ and becoming by grace what Christ is by nature.
All right, so you just made a very important point that I didn't really focus on. You said that the mission field for Saints Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene is 20 to 25 minutes away from your church.
An average American will drive 20 minutes to church.
Yeah, my commute is 37 minutes from my house to your church.
We got to plan another mission.
So I was just what I was saying. I was saying,
I've got 4 areas that I have dreams to planning a mission in, because that's our goal. Our goal is we're here to multiply. We're not here to divide. We're here to multiply.
I'm just hoping that Gainesville, Georgia, the other side of Cumming, Georgia, the other side of the lake, is one of them.
Gainesville, Dawson County.
Yep.
I want to do something in Hull County, and I also want to do something in Rome, Georgia.
Well, let's start in Gainesville. We have an Alpha Yiddo store. This is not a commercial, folks, but that has become a magnet for Greeks, because I go there now, and he says, the owners say, you should have this guy as your doctor. You should have this guy as your doctor. And they're all Greek doctors. It's like, what are you doing? Like, the Yiddo stand is. So yeah, there's an opportunity. All right, real quickly, because then we have a caller that I want to take here, and y'all have been so generous with the time. But I want you to I'm going to ask you an impossible question and an inappropriate question. Yeah, exactly. So tell me where you were last night at 3 p.m. No, I'm sorry. I actually saw Mr. Cristoforo and a few of the other youngsters, because they're all so much younger than me, leaving the hotel last night.
It's New York.
And
come on.
That's exactly what I was worried about. So anyway, pull out your crystal balls. And give me a perspective of what are some of the big things you see happening in the orthosphere here in the United States over the next, pick your time period, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I won't ask you to 100 years. That's impossible to comprehend because AI will take over. But anyway, tell me what you're seeing from the trajectory we're on as to what this church and these churches and our faith is going to look like here in America.
Yeah. So here's a thought which actually connects this mission parish idea. I think one thing that we've learned over the course of the last 100 years is that when it comes to communities, bigger is not necessarily better.
Amen.
Right? Your vision for your community is not to sort of get more and more and more people into this one place. Because I think that was kind of a vision for a long period of time. If a church had 1,200 families, that was a sign of success.
Yeah.
But how are you going to have one presbyter with 1,200 families?
Well, you don't have one presbyter. You have a sacrament factory.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and we know. I mean, you guys know this because I've heard you guys talk about it too. Dunbar's rule, right? You can only have a close personal relationship with up to 150 people.
That's it. And I think people are realizing that.
You start thinking about those parishes.
Yeah.
So, all right, go back.
So what I'm hoping that actually is we continue to see a multiplicity of new communities, intimate relational communities, right, that are built upon relationship and people coming together, not necessarily about the size, but about the quality.
Amen.
That's my kind of first thought about something that I'm seeing and that I hope continues to percolate.
And then to define what it means to have a healthy parish. It's one of the things that I know, Bill, you're working on this wonderful project that's coming up, and we're going to be
and we're going to talk about that after you guys leave and stuff like that.
Well, and we're thrilled to be one of the pilot parishes that are going to be participating in that. But we're going to talk about what does a healthy parish look like. Mm-hmm. And so, for me at least, what I see is I see that there's going to be. It's what the Apostle Paul said, and what I love it. What he said in one place, he said, "There was great opportunity before me, and great opposition."
Oh yeah.
And those two things always go together.
Wow.
Always.
Great opportunity, great opposition.
There's a great opportunity for me and great opposition, and that's going to be true for our Orthodox Church and our Orthodox experience here in the United States.
Yeah.
In the future, I really believe that. So there's going to be wonderful, great opportunity. But what I think is going to happen is more and more folks, and you're going to see folks who are genuinely serious about being normal Orthodox rise to the occasion, and folks that are just kind of they're Orthodox by accident. They're going to continue to struggle finding reasons to stay connected. They really are.
Right.
And that's just the natural process of winnowing that happens in any group of people. But I believe with all my heart that the church is going to continue to get healthier, and the church is going to solve its need for leaders and priests by becoming more healthy, because a healthy church grows and a healthy church produces its own leaders.
Yeah.
A healthy church cultivates its own leaders. We're very blessed.
Yeah.
I've got 2 men right now, former Protestant pastors that are in the diaconal program, a third one that's about to join, and I've got 1 young man at seminary and another man that I'm going to be sending to seminary soon. And the reality is that's what healthy communities produce. They produce men who want to be priests.
Yeah, and the whole notion of intentionality.
That's it.
Oh, I mean, your old phrase of orthodox on purpose,
That's
right?
it.
And I was praising him, Steve. We had a groundbreaking for the new, multi-zillion-dollar facility that's going to be built and coming.
Amen.
So, by the way, everybody bring your checkbooks.
I got to raise $2 million by the end of the year.
You heard that here first on Stewardship Calling Ancient Faith Radio. We're looking for $2 million donors. Thanks, Raphael Lucas. But we had a groundbreaking ceremony, and one of the young men who I know he's been talking to, one of his altar boys, who has kind of felt, because I know his dad, has kind of felt like, maybe I ought to think about the seminary, because I really feel called to do something like this. And when we had the groundbreaking, everybody sat with tables, and he had the table with the hierarchs and everything like that.
Story.
He had this young man sitting right next to him.
Oh, wow.
Right in the middle of all the hierarchs and all the big officials. And where I was sitting one table behind, I had a line of sight into this young man's face. He was positively beaming. He was not, and it wasn't because of the riveting conversation. No, I'm sure it was good. But no, seriously, Father Barnabas was actually letting him see what it might be like if he pursued his vocation and became a clergyman, right?
Yeah.
And he was also sending a signal to other young men who were there, who, maybe are not as far along in their vocational journey.
But that's the point. Healthy communities produce their own leaders.
Yeah.
And if parishes aren't producing leaders, they've got to find out why they're not healthy.
Yeah.
They've got to find out.
Yeah. And I want to piggyback on that a little bit, because that is 100% right. And Father Barnabas, you were focusing on like the clergy vocations, which are so critical.
Very critical.
If we're going to have more communities, we're going to need more presbyters out there, right?
Absolutely.
And
we need more leaders, lay leaders as well.
Which I think is an important thing. And that is something that I think we've seen, especially in the last handful of years. Right? People who don't necessarily have a calling to serve at the altar, but a calling to serve, to preach, to teach, whatever it is, because we need a body.
Amen.
We need a body.
You can't be just an ear. You can't
fingers and toes and everything.
You can't be. And that's frankly one of the reasons why this whole idea of an effective Christian ministry in local parishes, empowering the laos, the people of God, to be the people of God and to be the royal priesthood of all believers. It's the reason why we banish the word committee in our church.
Yeah.
We don't have any committees. We don't have any. We have ministry teams. Even the parish council is the parish council ministry team.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think so, as you guys start to see the future, I'm sensing that you see the metamorphosis, you see the change, you see the bridge that's in front of us.
Right.
But you see that there's an opportunity for growth and expansion.
Amen.
Of people that really are looking and seeking for that which we have, and that's the relationship.
To be honest with you, Bill, it's also there's also grief involved in that vision.
Yeah.
Because you're also going to see. I'm an organizational Darwinist. I'm okay. With an unhealthy organization going its way and saying, "But well, you served all these years, and we've come to the end, and God bless you." And that's going to happen too, and it'll be very tempting to see that happening, and situations where, boy, it doesn't look like this is going to continue, where we get to say, "God bless and thank you for your service." And it's just not happening anymore.
Yeah, because we are not loyal to organizations, right? We are loyal to the kingdom.
Exactly right.
Well, listen, you guys have been absolutely amazing. We could do this forever, and in fact, we probably ought to do it forever. We're getting a thumbs up from Mr. Maddox over here, and I got to tell you,
this is now turned into a 24-hour sort of marathon.
That's right. We're going to be broadcasting live for the rest of our lives, right here from the Marriott Marquis,
from beautiful New York City.
Right. But I want to thank Father Barnabas Powell, St. Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene in coming Georgia, and faithandcourage.org.
Thank you.
And you can make your contributions both to faithandcourage.org or to our building fund, which I think roped me into serving on. I don't know. I just made a mistake and I responded to an email, Steve. And Stephen Cristoforo, who has done such a wonderful job of dedicating so much of his life to really establishing the Y2AM ministry and the Be the Bee ministry and the pop culture coffee hour.
And effective Christian ministry, which
I was just going to say,
effective
Christian ministry, which Father Barnabas mentioned just here at the end. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how the effective Christian ministry program is now that has gone through an incredible series of cohort parishes and made such a powerful impact on youth ministry at parishes, is going to go to round 2 of their cohort program in the coming year. And we're going to start to use that exact platform to try and deliver additional wonderful content and whatnot.
It's exciting, man. It really is. The future of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese is absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely exciting. And I only regret that I'm not going to live more than 120 years.
Okay.
To be able
all right.
Well, I have to do that to build all the stuff I got to build.
Yeah. He's got to finish raising the money. We told him he can't die and can't leave until he's raised all the money.
Exactly.
So that's just the way it is. So thank you very much to Father Barnabas Powell. Thank you for Stephen Cristoforo. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to come back with a online guest or a telephone guest, and another couple of guests that are sitting over here in this special edition of Stewardship Calling Live on Ancient Faith Radio, live from the Marriott Marquis in New York, New York, contemporaneous with the 100th anniversary of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese. So we'll be right back.
Bill will be right back, but the lines are open if you want to ask a question or offer your thoughts. The number is 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
Reading through the entire Bible in just 1 year. To an average person in today's busy world, it seems like a daunting challenge. But in the Orthodox Daily Scriptures podcast, Father Alexis Khoury makes it a journey that is not only rewarding, but simple and accessible as well.
They buried their bones under the oak tree at Jabesh and fasted 7 days. So Saul died for his lawlessness, which he committed against the Lord according to the word of the Lord, because he did not keep it, and because Saul sought counsel of a wizard, and Samuel the prophet answered him. So he slew him and turned the kingdom over to David.
To find this podcast and others like it, you can go to ancientfaith.com.
Stewardship Calling is back, and we are ready for your call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Bill Marianes.
Well, welcome again to Stewardship Calling Live and Ancient Faith Radio, right here from the Marriott Marquis, downtown New York, New York, at the 100th anniversary of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, as we're celebrating its centennial. And the El Jefe Honcho of Ancient Faith Radio, John Maddox, came all the way up here and brought the studio up here so that we can have this great program and really start to talk with a wide variety of faithful who are working in different areas. And I have a unique opportunity right now. On the telephone, we have Father George Hasledis, who's from Church of Our Savior in Rye, New York, who has been instrumental in a really incredible ministry. And right here, sitting across the table from me at the Marriott Marquis, a very, very close personal friend of mine, although he hates to acknowledge that we're friends, right? But Mr. What's your name again? But Mr. Jim Gabriel, who also goes to the church in Rye, and who Father George has recruited into the incredible homeless ministry that we're going to talk about. And then afterwards, I'm also going to talk to Jim about the work that he's been doing with youth safety and youth protection, two critical issues. So, Father George, are you with us?
I sure am. How are you, Bill?
Thank God. I'm doing great. Are you doing all right?
I'm doing well. You know, I'm very inspired. I was about to write that check for $2 million, but I'm a few dollars short, so just give me a little time.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll call Father Barnabas. He walked out of the hotel room over here. I'll call him and let him know.
I'll work on getting the full amount.
I'll let him know that a check for $1.98 million is coming in. You know, you can keep a couple $100,000. So Father George is just a wonderful, wonderful human being and a great priest. But Father George, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to let Jim Gabriel to introduce you and to tell a little bit about you because he elbowed me out of that. And he's bigger than I am.
Yeah, much bigger.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And Father George, it is great to speak to you over the airwaves. I have told Bill a number of times about my experiences with you, and I just wanted to share it because, as Bill knows, and to share with Bill's listeners, I spent many, many years at a parish near my house, and about 6 years ago, I, for a number of reasons, which I don't need to go into, started attending on a regular basis Church of Our Savior in Rye. And I found something very interesting when I got there. I mean, aside from the fact that I knew there were some great people, and at that point, just George, right. He became Father George last year, but he was just George, our amazing pastoral assistant, chanter, and youth director, was leading a monthly or so ministry going down and feeding the homeless in New York City, feeding and clothing. And it was remarkable to me because I had participated in this ministry at my old parish. And we went down once a year and we brought food and clothing, and it was wonderful. And we came back home and patted ourselves on the back, right, and maybe went back next year. Then I get to Rye, and I found that Father George not only goes down every month, he goes down every Christmas Day at dinner to feed the homeless, every Western Easter, typically our Palm Sunday, to feed the homeless. And when we get down there, a amazing number of people I've met through him not only know his name, have his phone number, he knows what they need, and it just brought a whole nother level. I have to tell you, the first time I went on a midnight runs, they call it was life-changing. But when I started going with Father George, it was just blew me away. So I'm really glad he's on with us, and I should let him tell you because he's the one that's the absolute angel when it comes to this program.
Right, and so Father George, we've done a whole program here on Stewardship Calling and Ancient Faith Radio regarding the challenges being faced by the homeless and some of the opportunities that Orthodox churches have to serve that community. But I wanted to open it up to you now to share with us and share with all the listeners some of the things that you're doing at your church and in your ministry.
Well, those are some pretty big shoes to fill, what Jim had to say. And I, first and foremost, I'm very humbled by it all. But it's basically a group effort, and that's the most beautiful thing. And I think one of the most important things that we've done is brought this ministry home so that people can kind of understand, when we're feeding the homeless, we speak about them as our friends on the street. And they really are. They're our friends. They're our brothers and sisters in Christ. And we hopefully are seeing Christ when we go down, as he told us to do. But I think one of the most important things is for us to become, and in this age of social media, which obviously we have our difficulties with young people, becoming desensitized. And I think we've all, to some extent, become desensitized to the plight of people. And we watch it on TV. We hear about fundraising. We hear about homeless. We hear about this tragedy, that tragedy. And unfortunately, until we actually spend time with people who are going through it, we are becoming desensitized. And I think this is one of the most important ministries that we can take part in, that resensitize ourselves, or at least sensitize ourselves in a real way. When you are with folks and you're talking with them and you see the humanity and not just this person on the street that's asking for something, it really, one of my most important parts of this ministry is going down for me, and I share with everyone else. Please don't go down thinking you're doing a good deed. Go down hoping to learn and to grow from the experience, that it changes you as a person on the inside. So I think it's more important for us to go down for our benefit than for theirs. And most people that do go down on a regular basis, I think we've got an amazing crew, Jim included, because Jim is very close to Santa Claus, I've come to know, because Santa Claus every single year, as he says, I go down there, Santa Claus comes with us every single year, and he looks a lot like Jim Gabriel. It's pretty incredible. So, but
yeah, I heard, Father George, I heard an interesting story about Santa Claus after he finished one of your wonderful ministry activities, and he was driving in his ragtop, and he decided to pull the top down, and as he was driving along, he realized that cars were slowing down, and taking photographs of him because they had not seen Santa Claus in a convertible driving in New York. I mean, that's just kind of crazy.
And this was this past Christmas when it happened to be 55, 60 degrees out on Christmas night. And I'm driving, I've got an hour drive home. And at one point I stopped at a red light and a car pulls up and this young man, 30-ish, goes, "Hey, Santa, what happened to my PS5?
Yeah, so we got to be careful now. We don't want his head to get too big on him here, Father.
To Father's point,
so people don't know that reindeer aren't allowed on the FDR, and that's the whole thing. That's why he.
Is that what it is? Okay.
To Father's point, he's so right though, because what I feel selfish going on the midnight runs with Father George. What we get out of it, the people we meet, and honestly, being Santa Claus for a night, or at least looking like Santa Claus for a night, you just get to meet people who, to be honest, 5 years earlier, or at least 10 years earlier, if I walked down one of those blocks, I would cross the street. Okay, confession here.
That's right.
This has changed me in, in the way I view these people as friends who are helping us realize what life is about as much as we're helping them. And again, I thank Father George for that a lot. But
that's a powerful witness, Jim, and I appreciate your sharing that. But the truth of the matter is, people who have been affected by a ministry like that have all had that metanoia, that change of heart that you went through, to realize that those individuals are also made in God's image, and while they may have faced some hard times or some hard issues, they now have a unique opportunity to do something really extraordinary. So, Father, how did you get started with this? I mean, why don't you share the listeners, how did you get started with this? And also, what are some of the things that you would recommend parishes consider doing as they pursue a ministry like this?
Well, I can't take credit for this. This was a ministry that was being done in our church. I don't know how frequent it was being done, if it was once a month, but I kind of stepped into it and took over and kind of, picked up where some of the other volunteers kind of left off, and just hopefully made it something that we do on a regular basis. And it's interesting that you asked that. And I think we can all learn if we open up our hearts, because the interesting thing for me was we were doing this once a month, and I had a very close friend who asked, can I do it on Christmas? Because we have a restaurant, we want to do it on Christmas. And this is going back probably 15, 16 years at least. And the funny thing was, I was originally saying, you know what, it's Christmas Day, we do it once a month, and this wonderful idea you have, this warm fuzzy, is kind of like a little bit much, and people have stuff to do on Christmas, and sure enough, they kept insisting, and I said, you know what, all right, let's just do it, and I figured we'd do it. And I learned such a valuable lesson, and I said, shame on me, because after doing that on Christmas Day that first time, I said, I never want to spend Christmas ever again not doing this. So I was taught a really valuable lesson by someone who just wanted to do it one time on Christmas, and I said, what a better way to spend Christmas than to be with our brothers and sisters on the street who need Christ the most. What more is the message of Christmas than that? And we've been doing it every single Christmas since. And the amazing amount of people that want to come and partake in it is just so incredible, so incredible.
Well, the Holy Spirit always works in amazing ways that we can't always predict in that regard. So in this case, that parishioner was that catalyst of the Holy Spirit to get you to do it. Now, how do you go about recruiting all of these people to give up their Christmas days to go out in the streets and help these blessed people?
That's a great question. What we do is we advertise in our bulletin. I advertise with our Bible study group, and even with our youth ministries. A lot of times we'll do a youth ministry or GOA midnight run, or a youth ministries where the younger kids will come and help us out with the sandwiches, and then they get excited and want to come. But we've had parents bring even 8, 9-year-olds with, and our Goyans have come down. Our young adults have done it. We've done it with quite a few other churches, and we kind of it's word of mouth. The bulletin. It's announced on Sundays and after church when we make our announcements. And we just kind of, even just inviting folks. And it just seems like people are always coming. We have so many friends. We have some friends that are coming all the way from Connecticut that drive all the way down about an hour. To
really?
And then they have that long ride up after 1 o'clock in the morning when we get home. And it's just incredible. So there's so many groups that want to take part in it. And, it's advertised, but there's always someone new and pretty much the same old regulars. And it's an incredible thing. People want to do it. And I think when people start sharing their experience, they get excited. And especially young people, teenagers, when we empower them and they start doing that stuff, it's amazing to see them, how they want to interact with the folks and realize that, wow, this isn't that scary crazy hobo, like, that image that we have. These are just real nice folks that are having hard times, that are really nice to talk to, and they enjoy it, and they want to come back, and they want to share it with their friends, and that's how it really builds. And it's just incredible, the power that they do give to us, and that just spreads like wildfire. It's incredible.
So let's talk to one of your old regulars, my old friend Jim Gabriel over here. So I get that you go to the first one of these, and I get that you said, okay, well, this is a righteous thing. Talk a little bit how it made you feel. Let's get it. I know you're not a touchy-feely kind of guy.
Oh, wow.
But UIT people, sometimes need to be caused to share an emotional reaction to this incredible ministry.
That's a real good question. First of all, I don't know that I remember how it made me feel the first time, but I can tell you every time I go, and I'll try to build up. It made me feel, first of all, very ashamed that for years I had walked past these people on the other side of the street.
Never saw them, did you?
Never saw them. Or if I did, I ran in the other direction.
Right.
It made me feel that we had a lot to offer each other, and that honestly, it's become, I want to be there every time, not at all to pat myself on the back. It's because I feel I get richer every time. We meet people who, a month ago, was the Greek parade, marching up Fifth Avenue.
Right.
We're marching up Fifth Avenue, surrounded by Greek flags, and a gentleman comes running out towards Father George. And Father George, you may remember who it was. I don't remember his name, but it was one of the people that we see regularly on Friday nights.
Wonderful.
Okay, you feel like there's a community that you're part of, and that you're tangibly, and this is something we learned from Father George originally. What the people we're helping want more than food or clothing is someone to talk to.
Yeah.
But that may be what they want, but that gives so much back to us as well. And it just, it makes you feel that Matthew 25 kind of is everything to you now, and you realize. And by the way, actually, the way I said Father George, Father George talks about it. Our parish Tamados, Father Elias Villas, also is very supportive of the Midnight Run. So our parish, from the top down, there's just been a lot of support. And just once you go, you're feeling like you are heeding Christ's words in Matthew 25. You feel like you are helping people, and you feel better as a result, and you got to keep going.
Yeah, you're actually making a difference in that regard. Now, for those of you who are not Yankees from New York over here, you probably did not understand what he called this program. So why don't you try to name this program, and don't use New York accent, because you mumbled the name of it, and I think it's a cool name.
I apologize, Bill, and I will even overlook on the air that you called me a Yankee.
He's a Mets fan, ladies and gentlemen, so I just want you to know that's the biggest insult I could think of.
I think there's a little bit of static there. I didn't quite get that.
Yeah.
Father George is a Yankee. Anyway, the Midnight Run is a program that we work via, I would say. It's an organization, and again, I will defer back to Father George to fill you in, but basically they were started by a former homeless gentleman from the city, from the streets, who started this organization whose primary simple version of the purpose is they schedule stops for various groups. So, for example, you might have numerous churches, including, by the way, a number of other Greek Orthodox churches in the area, and temples and college groups, and want to go feed the homeless. Well, in the old days before Midnight Run, everybody would probably descend on Penn Station, where there are many homeless, and there'd be 10 cars trying to feed the same people.
Right.
What Midnight Run does, in addition to many other supporting pillars around it, is they say, okay, this Friday, you're making these 4 stops. And they tell Church of the Resurrection, you're making these different 4 stops.
And when you make a stop, what does that mean? Describe for the listeners what that means.
We're given a stop. For example, 68th Street off First Avenue. Okay? And we pull up there. He even tells us pull on the east side of the street here. And he's gotten the word out to the homeless community so they know we're coming.
Okay. All right.
So first of all, the homeless know we can go here or here or here or here, and we know that we're going to go. So you're effectively reaching many more people on the streets.
Sure.
And we typically go, and every group does it differently. Some bring trucks or vans. We typically drive our own cars, anywhere from 4 to 6 cars.
Okay.
One loaded with food and hot coffee and water.
Like what kinds of foods?
Typically, leaving Christmas aside,
right?
Ham and cheese, turkey and cheese, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Oh, good meals.
And then we take whatever clothes we have and divide them up. So I might have sweaters and jackets. Somebody might else have pants. Somebody else has toiletries and underwear.
Right.
But we kind of divide things between this many cars, and we get down there, and they're like, "Do you have pants? Oh, go to the red car up there." Mm-hmm. But and then you get to corners where there are some people who are sleeping, infirmed, can't come over. Two very interesting things. We will get to a corner, 54th and 3rd, and one of the people we're serving says, "Jerome is around the corner. People tell us who needs to have things brought to them."
They're a community themselves looking out for
very
each other.
much so.
Yeah.
And other stops, we just know, go around the corner, there'll be 6 people sleeping under the scaffolding.
Right.
Bring them at least food and maybe clothing.
Okay.
Now, Midnight Run as an organization, Father George deals directly with their founders. He can probably add to what I said about what they actually do.
Okay. So, Father George, if you're back on, I know that we've had some technical difficulties here on the phone, but can you tell us a little bit about this organization and the way you interface with them?
Yeah, Midnight Run, from what I understood, I don't know if I can mention his name, but the one who's basically in charge was a homeless person himself. And he's come and spoken at our church as well. Just an incredible man, and some very, very touching and profound things that he said when he was on the street. And he said it was, and it's something that I'll never forget. He said, in a city of 8 million people, I never thought that I could feel so alone. And he said it took one person that came and actually sat down, gave me a sandwich, and spoke to me that gave me hope.
Wow.
And he said, if I ever get up from this position, place that I'm in, I want to make sure that I do something to help others and give them the same opportunity. And sure enough, this is what he did. And again, that's why I kind of always like to stress is that it's that personal touch, that sharing, that you care about them, because we've had people just almost start crying because we asked for their name. He said, people give me food, but no one asked my name. This is really cool.
Yes.
Something as simple
as simple a thing as that is, right? I mean, just tell me what your name is.
Yeah,
that's so personal.
Throw me a sandwich. Yeah, you cared about me, and it wasn't like you felt like you were bringing food to a homeless person. You came to see me, and that's really what makes all the difference in the world. And so that's where Midnight Run really began, and it's just amazing how many different groups are involved in it. They have their own vans that they will give to whoever needs to use it, and they'll even provide, the food and the supplies when needed as well. And that's what's so great about it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. Thank God we're very self-supportive at this point, and we also try to raise donations so that we can help them out on top of it all. But it's just that's basically the nuts and bolts of it.
So basically, at least once a month, you are out on the streets of New York, actually reaching and touching those individuals who are down on their luck and getting to know them and getting to know their names, and then providing them what they need, whether it's food or clothing, and in every case, it's just love and support, right?
Absolutely. And we, like I said, and Jim is so humbled. I mean, there's a lot of people that know Jim's name, and then the big guy or Santa Claus. Where's the big guy today? Where's the guy?
Big guy? You giving me a new nickname for him, Father? I've got a lot of nicknames for Jim Gabriel, but I'm calling him the big guy now. I'm going to use that one. Thank you.
It's better than Yankee. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That is better than Yankee. Yeah, and that's so. Yeah. Well, sometime we'll get him. Let me ask you this question. I mean, obviously they know that you're a priest, and they know that this is from a church group. Does the whole concept or topic of religion ever come up when you're out there?
At times it does. It's funny because one of the foundations of Midnight Run is not to push religion on anybody.
Right.
So we
just help these people.
There's plenty of times that they've asked, "Hey, can we pray?" And we'll pray with them and have a little time. When we do Christmas, we just say one quick prayer with everybody because it's Christmas. But if someone asks us, we love praying with you and so forth like that. But people ask about the church, they ask about this, and I think that's one of the greatest witnesses of Orthodoxy or any Christian ministry is that we're not pushing anything on you. We're just here because we love you. And then they ask, hey, what church do you belong to? Or what is it? And then we have some nice theological discussions. Some of these, they're incredible Christians, very faithful. They'll ask to pray as well. So you see all different types of denominations. We don't get too deep into anything, but this is what comes out of some of the conversations, and it really is beautiful. And you start to see all the vast, like, it's a incredible collage of different faiths and everything else, and you start to realize that. But again, I think the most important thing is we're not asking you to become Christian. We're not pushing anything down your throat. We're just loving you, and they want to know more.
Yeah, we will let people ask us, how is Greek Orthodox different from being, people, not all the time, but it definitely comes up.
Yeah, so it's part of the journey, it's part of the conversation, but it's not something that's particularly driven or pushed out in any real sense. It was real funny, Father. I was talking to one of the deacons in the church, and they had gone to the St. Nicholas dedication that took place just on Monday. And as they were coming back from the dedication, and of course, he was dressed as in his cassock, and some two total strangers came up to him and asked them if he would pray for them. And he obviously talked to him a little bit about it, and one was, I think, Afghani, and the other one was, I don't know what he was, but just the notion that they saw somebody and they said, "Would you pray for me?" I think that was just a special treat. So, so in terms of what are some of the other? So I'm thinking about now. Not every city will have an organization like Midnight Run available to them and stuff like that. So, what are some of the other things that you think that you can suggest that parishes can consider to try and amp up and engage themselves in a more robust way in the homeless ministry?
And that's a great question, and I think it's really important that we don't try to reinvent the wheel if the wheel's been invented. Because, for example, there's a Don Bosco Center, which is run by the Catholic Church, which is right in the next town over from us in Portchester, and they do a meal twice a day, and they also have a food pantry, which our Lady Philippikos has now been connected to. We were doing their Thanksgiving meal, and we go even have volunteers and go over there and help serve the meals and so forth. And we bring clothing and stuff over there. And they have an incredible ministry to the homeless and to the poor of that area. And that's just, if you can find somewhere where there's a ministry that's going on, just trying to attach it and how you can help. But like our sister church in New Rochelle, they do a homeless ministry as well once a month on a Thursday. And they go downtown, they set up tables, and it's at the same place every time. And a lot of our same folks from Midnight Run see them over there. It's the Greeks. You Greeks are the best, they say. And they just set up the whole table, and they have all the food right there, and they stay at the same place. It's strictly through them because there's always a need. So I think it's just kind of brainstorming and seeing where the need is, and just doing a little bit of homework where it would work, and it just kind of builds. We're just finding out what homeless shelters are in the area, and then you kind of talk to the folks that are running them and see what they can use and what you can do for them as well.
So the idea of not reinventing the wheel is just a real critical piece of messaging that I think everybody needs to think about, because even as parishes start to think of using the opportunity to serve others in that regard, they sometimes get a little bit overwhelmed by thinking they have to figure out how to do this, and yet here are other ministries that you can just partner with.
And if I may add, because that's absolutely true, you don't want to reinvent or be redundant.
Right.
And if you have an existing group, as we do with Midnight Run,
you're pronouncing that more clearly now. I want to commend you for that. I mean, I criticize you a lot, big guy, but when you can learn to enunciate, that's really very pleasant.
Thank you, William. But what I was going to say, I am actually making more of a conscious effort to speak slowly, because, as you know, I sometimes forget to do that.
Yes, and just so y'all know, in case you were wondering over here, there's no reason why you cannot have fun doing church work, okay? You can have fun, you can meet incredible people, you can really enjoy each other's company, and you can jawbone it back and forth. It's all good.
So what I was going to add, though, is one of the other benefits of going with Midnight Run. Some of the stops they give us, I would never on my own have imagined we had homeless on Park Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
On the Upper East Side. And they know where the homeless are. If we tried doing this on our own,
you'd miss
we
that.
probably wouldn't be shooting for some of the high rent districts where we do stop. And unfortunately, I remember at least one stop when we had to. There was construction spots. We moved up half a block and we're right in front of an apartment building on Park Avenue.
That's got to be amazing to think that.
The doorman was very upset that we were stopped there.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And so there's somebody who didn't understand the gospel.
But
that's a teachable moment right there, isn't it?
It is, and it makes you sad. We're feeding homeless around the corner from very affluent areas.
Yeah, think about that for a second. Here they are in one of the biggest cities in the world, certainly one of the most expensive cities in the world, in one of the most affluent areas in this big city, and yet those folks are just looking for just anything that can help them get on.
Now, on the flip side, I think Father George will remember this. 3 or 4 runs ago, we were at a stop, and a gentleman came by and asked what we were doing, and then wanted more information. Father George, remember, I think this was by the post office when somebody came by and wanted to either contribute to Midnight Run or. Yeah. So you do get both sides, which is equally as heartwarming as the other is, shaking.
No, that's a great point, and that's one thing I want to reinforce to everybody here to think about, and that is, as you do the amazing work, as you become the light of the world, as we're taught to be in the Gospel of Matthew, your letting your light shine is observed by others around you. And some, like the case you just said, will act on it and say, how can I help? How can I do something? And others may just go home and think about it and pray about it and decide, maybe I can do something a little bit more. And so we don't have to worry about keeping track of names and things of that nature. We just need to go on about doing what we can do to help God's creatures, and God and the Holy Spirit will take care of the rest. So, Father George, is there any? I'm sorry. Go.
Yeah, I can't.
Go ahead, please.
I can't tell you how many times we've either been shopping for underwear or socks, or when we're at Costco picking up chicken or whatever it might be, and I've got all these cooked chickens that that's like a whole skid full. Or all these socks, and like, wow, you need a lot of socks. And we just kind of like an opportunity. And then people say, what are you doing with all these pies or all these chickens? And we kind of explain what they're doing. They're like, wow, that's awesome. We've had people give us their gift cards, give us money towards from the line.
Yep.
Towards that. What a beautiful ministry. And they say, God bless you. So I remember one of the first Christmas that we went down, and one of the folks down there said, you came all the way down from Rye, New York to be with Christmas with us? He said, I was at church the other day, and the pastor said that because people don't help other people, that's why everyone's business is failing. He said, so God bless your business. And I looked at him, I said, well, God is my business. He goes, well, okay.
I'm in the God business as a priest. Thank you very much.
God is my business already. So.
Yeah. No, but I think that's a great point that you all just have made, and that is the opportunity for us to be witnesses to others, not only servants to those men and women who are struggling, but also to be witness to others that inspires them to take whatever step that they can do in their own time. Yeah. So, all right, one last thing. Any other advice or suggestions, Father George? I got one more thing I need to cross-examine Brother Gabriel about, but I wanted to give you one more chance to share any other insights that you can about this incredible ministry that you're doing for the homeless people in New York.
Well, to me, again, I'll just kind of reiterate everything we said earlier. It's a matter of understanding what our calling is, and there's a point where each and every one of us as Orthodox Christians have to realize we all have a calling, we all have an obligation, and it's not just for the priest or the pastoral minister or the Sunday school teacher. It's for every single person in the church to reach out and let exactly what you said earlier, your light shine. And it doesn't take a whole lot. It just takes a willingness to give up a little bit of time and to share a little bit of love, and again, to become sensitized and just give a little bit of time and allow Christ to work through you. And it's a simple ministry. You don't have to know theology. We say all the time, preach the gospel always, and when necessary, use words. And what a great opportunity. You don't need to be a theologian to just show some love. And amazing what the Holy Spirit does for us. So it's a matter of just asking and trying to be part of it. And it just takes taking that first leap of faith and saying, I'm going to do it today. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to do it today. And then let God work through you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for taking time out. I know you've been busy here at the Clergy-Laity Congress for a lot, and I know you got a lot of parish responsibilities that you need to do also, but I wanted to thank you for taking time and sharing your beautiful testimony to people to hopefully inspire listeners to think about how they can help others in need, how they can have their Luke 10:37 moment of going and serving somebody who needs that service, right? And thank you for what you do with the parish in Rye, and thank you very much for taking the enormous responsibility of the soul of the big guy across the table for me over here, because I think he needs a lot of religious work over here. I mean, he's one of the most faithful guys I know, but I tell you what, he's something, and the fact that he's willing to follow you is a testament to your leadership. So God bless you for that.
Amen. Even though as a Yankee fan, can you believe it? That's what the amazing part of it.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you also for the amazing ministry you have on here with your show. It's incredible, and thank God we're reaching out. So.
Well, no, thank you. And I mean, you actually said it when you said to live the calling that you have been called, and you've actually said. So, good night, Father George. Thank you so very much for joining us over here. And I'm going to continue with the cross-examination of Mr. Gabriel, if you don't mind.
All right.
So, Jim, one of the other things that has been a staple in your ministry work is youth ministry. And, you've served in so many different capacities at so many parishes in the Archdiocese in youth ministry in so many different ways. And you always, complain about the fact you could have, should have, would have done more. But to be honest with you, what you're already doing is great. I don't want to focus on any of the rest of that unless you want to. But what I really want to have you to share a few words with our listeners about is the importance of youth protection and youth safety and some of the safeguards that have been implemented within the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese in that regard.
I will do that. Thank you, Bill. I'm going to give a very brief segue into it, only because I think it helps explain how I got.
Fair enough. The journey is important.
So my first involvement in youth ministry was actually in my young adult days, when I was tapped by a friend to help another friend with work that the young adults in New York were doing in the 80s at St. Basil Academy.
All right, so this is right after electricity was invented in the 1880s, right?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
I got it.
Up at St. Basil Academy, and I ended up basically living there weekends. And my buddy and I would spend the weekends in the high school dorm with the boys. We'd take them out, and I'm going to come back to this later. You'll see why. And it just got me thinking about youth, which I never really had before, okay? So now flash forward 20 years later, my son is a Goya age, and he was doing a Goya project, and I was helping him, and through helping him, I started working with then Deacon Evergoris, who was the youth director for the district, who tapped me to help with the district youth committee, which then segued to the National Youth Committee, which is how I ended up a few years ago working on a National Youth Committee when youth safety was being rolled out, and it kind of fell in my lap. I wouldn't have thought to work on youth safety, just because we don't really think about it, right? We think about Goya and maybe joy and hope. And to answer what I think you wanted me to talk about, our kids, we've always, many of us in the church have always, to some degree or other, cared about our kids and consider them the future.
Yeah.
Now, and this is why, in my St. Basil's days, as a 20-something-year-old working with high school kids, we loved it up there.
Yeah.
We took the kids out for meals. I took 3 kids to a Mets game one day.
Oh, that's unfortunate. You didn't let them see a real baseball team play.
But, and I think the kids enjoyed it. I know I did.
Yeah.
Now, imagine today the director of an academy saying, oh, sure, you can take 3 of my kids in your car 100 miles away.
Random stranger, you're going to take the,
the times are different. But in times like today, we have to all be that much more vigilant about our kids. Things that we could do 30 years ago, we can't do anymore. I mean, at least not the same way. And I know that over the last 5, maybe even 10 years, various archdiocese institutions, particularly summer camps and Olympics and such, have had, and I know this because my son was a counselor, have had to take training, okay?
Yep.
But it was roughly 3 years ago that the Archdiocese, somewhat delayed, rolled out an official youth policy where basically it's very simple, define at each parish, not at each institution, who is a youth worker. Okay? Sunday school teacher, Greek school teacher, altar server, or altar assistant, okay?
Basketball
GOA advisor,
coach,
coaches,
dance coach, yeah, right.
They register them.
Right.
Then they sign up in the Master Archdiocese system, and there are two components. There's training, which they have to repeat once a year.
Right.
And there's a criminal background check, which has to be refreshed every 2 years.
Right.
Okay. It's that simple. Now, everybody who's a youth worker is now in the central system, and if they then want to go be a camp counselor,
right,
or work at the Olympics,
or if they move to another metropolis, for example,
they are already registered, right, or not, but now they registered for the first time there,
right?
Because before we were potentially saying, as you do more and more of this, well, if you're going scouting and Olympics and camp, you got to do the same thing 3 times.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So we've now done it where you register your parish. Now, to be honest, it's still in its bit of its infancy. I've been helping, and this goes back to my home parish of Rye, where Father George, who, as you now know, I love as
amazing.
Our proestamenos, since I've been there and before, was Father Elias Villas, who's also the district chancellor for the Archdiocesan district now.
Yeah, but he's the camp guru of all camp
and
gurus.
He is
There's
also
nobody that's more invested in young adult ministry.
And one of the reasons I ended up at Rye is because my son went to Camp St. Paul to be a counselor.
There you go.
And fell in love with Camp St. Paul and Father Elias, right. At which point I realized we talk about our camps all the time. We talk about our camps, Ionian Village, the Metropolis, what they do for the kids. What we don't talk about is what they do for the counselors, the young adults. You talk about a powerful young adult ministry.
Yes, good point.
Our camp counselors, I've just seen my son's Kumbado at his wedding in a few months. He met at Camp St. Paul. They were counselors together.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So anyway, so I've been helping recently with Camp St. Paul, and I call the parish and say, you got 4 kids from your parish who are going to be counselors. Can you add them as youth workers? And you know what? People don't all quite get the flow now.
Yeah.
But we're getting there. And, for anyone who's listening that's involved in a parish with youth workers, just go, kind of go back to your parish, ask who your youth safety administrator is.
Right.
And see what you can do to possibly help. Because it's a very, and the gentleman that walked in the door can say much more in detail than I can about this. But, the national rollout at the parish level is roughly 3 years old. We still need to do better than we're doing. But we have come a long way, and what we need to get is what everyone who is a youth worker is in the system and is compliant. As simple as that.
So as if on cue, and I'm a little bit suspicious that you have a direct pipeline to the General Council of the Archdiocese, but this incredible man, George Sugarakos, has just walked in the room. And George, what I've segued the big guy over to, we were talking about homeless ministry, so that was a really powerful lesson. But what I segued him over to is I really wanted to spend a little bit of time with the work that's being done on the youth protection, the youth safety, and the youth protection requirements. And Jim was just describing some of that. But as General Counsel of the Archdiocese, you have a unique seat and perspective on all of this. So what would you like to share with the listeners about that and its importance?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Jim for all his assistance. As you know, Bill, being a volunteer yourself, these programs, these policies that we have for the protection of our youth, the protection of our faithful, go nowhere without the assistance and support of hardworking people like Jim and yourself. So thank you all to all the people out there. In addition to that, we have Rhea Ballas, who's recently taken over for Father Earl, who's taken retirement. And Rhea's really taken us to the next level.
Rhea's just amazing. I mean, I went over to talk to her about something for youth protection in my metropolis, and she was just you got her trained well, or she's trained you well. I don't know which is which, but y'all are a great team together.
We're all working for Rhea, I think.
And Rhea is great. And Rhea recently transitioned from being the youth director for the metropolis of Pittsburgh, right? And I should add.
Wait, you've stolen a youth director and brought her into this important position?
I don't think stolen is the right word, Jim. I don't know what you.
No, I didn't use that word. But I should add that for the last 3 years, all of the metropolis youth directors who already had full-time jobs, running camping, going, have all really put they may not be volunteers the way some of us are, but they've had to put in so many extra hours, trips to parishes, that there's been a phenomenal network of folks looking to get this rolled out.
Right. And that's just really so. George, from your perspective, what is it that you would like to share with listeners about ways that they can help ensure the safety of our youth and the requirements regarding our youth workers and things of that nature?
Well, I mean, for the average parishioner, they don't really do anything other than ask the right questions, which is father or the GOA advisors or whatever youth advisors they're dealing with. Are we in compliance with the Archdiocesan policies? Because the Archdiocesan policies is excellent. We're partnered with Sterling. They're doing a very good job. We think we just started, so I think they're going to do a very good job in terms of the background check and the training, which is streamlined and should be effortless for most of our advisors, youth workers to comply with. So for the average faithful, the average person whose children are in the ministries, just ask the questions. If the questions are answered in the affirmative, I think everybody can be assured that we're doing the best job that can be done in terms of protecting our youth and our faithful in our ministries. And
can you talk just a little bit about the hotline? Because I think that's something else that some people may not have known about or never heard about.
Yeah, I mean, the hotline is a relatively new policy. It's passed earlier this year, specifically with respect to clergy misconduct. And there's a third-party hotline that we've rolled out. It's on our website. There's an 800 number that's monitored 24/7. You can request to do it in English, Spanish, or Greek. Same thing with the website. You can file a complaint if you think that your clergy, and that could be at a camp, it could be at a school, it could be at a parish, has engaged in misconduct, which is a very broad umbrella, and there's a number of different enumerated activities that would fall there.
Right.
And it's a policy that's been in place for 20 years, but it's the new feature to that is we are paying a third party to monitor that hotline, create reports automatically to both the lay side and the clergy side, to initiate a process that's got a series of checks and balances to make sure the complaint is being thoroughly investigated and taken care of, and also it triggers an automatic reporting to the authorities, regardless of the nature of the misconduct, whether it's criminal in nature or not. The police will be involved to make that determination for us. So, as well as social services. So it's a
comprehensive system.
Comprehensive, and the idea is we want to communicate both with the youth protection and with this policy. We want to communicate to the faithful that if you're going to a Greek Orthodox church, the Archdiocese, the metropolises, all the parishes, all the related ministries, and the institutions are doing as good a job as can be done to protect its faithful, make sure that they can worship our Lord in peace and safety, which is the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think that's just really an exciting. I mean, in some respects, it should always be the case. But we were talking before you got here that things have changed in the last 20 years with regard to the ease by which adults and youth interact, and we have to be at the vanguard of making sure that they are as safe as we can possibly make them.
And even now, I've had a parish in New York where last year I called the priest and said, "Father, you're going to camp next week. You need to," and it's like, well, why? Why should people should trust their priests?
Right.
That is still a reaction we get.
That's part of the education process.
We have, and it's just education. And it was very simple. It was, "Father, I absolutely believe that you know exactly what to do.
Right.
If you end up with a charge or lawsuit against your parish and you have not been certified," and he took it right away.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I know Bill would like that in the words of the great Ronald Reagan, trust but verify.
Trust but verify. That's exactly right. George has heard me use those kind of quotes in our legal committee calls. And I provide the comic relief on his very serious legal committee calls. He's a great lawyer, and I'm just like the clown.
And by the way, the training modules actually teach you something.
Yeah, no, those are good training modules.
I actually learn from them.
Yeah. I will confess I haven't done the latest one because I'm not a youth worker anymore. But even some of the early stuff when I was looking at it, I thought, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Anything else, George, that you would like to share from your vantage point? We're talking about 100 years in the rearview mirror or more of the GOA, and now we're starting to look at a new cycle of 100 years or more. From the unique vantage point of general counsel of this institution, what else would you like to share?
Yeah, I mean, my vantage point is very narrow in scope. I mean, His Eminence has the difficult job of looking broadly across all ministries, across all facets of our faith. I only look at one narrow area, which is risk, and And I can say that by and large, we've done a decent job at managing risk. It has not been perfect. We all are familiar with, mishaps and things we could have done better over the past 100 years. But I got to say, compared to other faiths, we've done a pretty good job of managing the risk. But I think, as I said, as I started at the beginning, with the support of people like you and Jim, and the rest of the lawyers on the legal committee and the youth advisors, the youth workers, and the staff, including Rhea, I feel very confident that we're going to continue managing the risk very, very well for the next 100 years. And so the benefit of that is that's one thing that His Eminence won't have to worry about as he manages the more important issues relative to our faith.
Well, and I think that's always the hard job of being a general counsel is, looking out on the horizon and saying, where are the next attacks going to happen, and how do we prepare as best we can?
Yeah, nobody wants to hang out with the lawyer. That's the bottom line. All we think about is negative things.
So is that the reason why you came in by yourself? I mean, we've got a bunch of other people over here that are going to be on the program in just a few seconds, and you walked in by yourself, like the Maytag repairman, the lonely general counsel, right?
Exactly. Well, but it was a pleasure spending some time with you guys. I apologize to the rest of your very
that
worthy
you just
guests
jumped in front of. Okay, that's all right. Well, I think some of the rest of them are going to be talking on things that are somewhat related. We're going to shift focuses right now and start to talk about some of the accounting and some of the requirements of integrity, transparency, and accountability. We have two accounting experts from parishes to talk about some of that. So you're welcome to stick around or not, or you're welcome to go and enjoy the beautiful city that you live in.
I'm going to go enjoy the city. I will say, though, that hotline also relates to financial misconduct, too.
Oh, that's a very important point. So
all whistleblower complaints.
So if indeed there's any potential financial irregularities that somebody in the parish comes away from or comes aware of, they should be contacting the hotline.
Absolutely.
And you said it was in Greek, English, and Spanish. Is it in New York also?
It's
because I have trouble relating to Gabriel over here. I need for us Southerners, I can't always understand him. So
brave man, Jim. He comes into Manhattan and he makes that joke.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to leave the city alive. But
I am staying quiet. That way he can't make fun of me anymore.
Well, I'm doing this on the air. It's live. There are a lot of people that are witnesses right now. So if I don't make it back home, John, I want you to know it's these Yankees that are to be blaming.
Thank you,
guys. Thank you very much for all you do. God bless you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Hey, we're going to take a very quick break right now, and we're going to cycle in a couple of other guests here. And so if you'll just bear with us right now, we'll be right back. And again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to call in on the helpline. So let's take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Bill will be right back, but the lines are open if you want to ask a question or offer your thoughts. The number is 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
For all of us, male or female, parent or not, that's what it's often like, isn't it? It's at the end of our own tether that the miracle happens. It is in our greatest weakness that God's strength is known. It's when we decrease that He can increase. It's in losing our life that we find it. To put it another way, it's in the spot where St. Morwenna falls down, exhausted, that her spring rises up. It's when the people of God curse Moses in the wilderness and wish themselves back in Egypt that they hear the crack of the staff, the gush of water through the rock. It's when God Himself is spat upon and mocked and bleeding and dead that the glorious resurrection is ushered in.
From 7 Holy Women, Conversations with Saints and Friends, now available as an audiobook at Audible, Amazon, and iTunes.
Stewardship Calling is back, and we are ready for your call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Bill Marianes.
Well, welcome back to Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio. We're coming to you live from the Marriott Marquis in downtown New York, New York, contemporaneous with the 100th anniversary of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America. And we're privileged to bring in some people that are coming in from various different perspectives to kind of share with you a little bit about what's going on in the Archdiocese, what's going on in the last 100 years. And we have one of my guests that's coming up next is about 100 years old. And then his colleague over here is much, much younger. But what we're really focusing on are some of the things that the Archdiocese is doing and is going to do going forward. So first to Methuselah, another very dear friend of mine, at least until tonight. And his name is Craig Clausen, and Craig is an accountant. He is a lawyer. He's a travel agent. He's a chief cook and bottle washer, but he's also the parish council president of St. John in Omaha, Nebraska. So if you ever get down there, I'm sure we're going to talk about that. And he was finally able to introduce to me someone who is really amazing. Catherine Demas, do you call it Maydu or Maydu or Maydu? Okay. All right. So Catherine is also a very proficient accountant, management consultant, leadership development person, has a plethora of skill sets and abilities. And so she has joined this conversation. She too goes to the St. John Parish in Omaha. And Craig's reminding me that she's the treasurer, which means they trust you with the money that they don't trust with Craig, notwithstanding his background, right?
That's true.
That's correct.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the safeguards that you think are critically important for parishes to embrace from a financial accounting and transparency level. As George Tsoukarakos mentioned, financial irregularities are also available to be called in on the hotline. But talk a little bit about the importance of integrity, transparency, and accountability from the financial and accounting perspective.
I believe that we need to have multiple people handling all the transactions so that people see that not one single person is handling the finances. There are several people involved in every transaction, and I think that's the key, and it has to be visible so that the people can see that, we're not running around with a handful of money.
Right.
Right. Segregation of duties, Craig, is what you're talking
Yes.
about. And then, like you said, having more than one person in the room counting cash.
Mm-hmm.
How I ran it as treasurer for the first year was I didn't sign a single check. I was responsible for all the accounting transactions so that other people were signing the checks, checking my work. So checks and balances is important, bank reconciliation, timely transactions being recorded in a timely manner, timely reporting, and then the important reports that the council should be looking at on a regular basis. I give my council a report based on everything that was paid for the last month, so they can see all the checks that were paid in the last
every
month.
transaction.
Every transaction. Right. Now we have a second treasurer involved, so we have two treasurers, one for accounts payable, one for accounts receivable.
Another set
of eyes, yes. Right. I think that's important because not all parishes are going to be able to afford to have an external auditor come in and opine on the statements that they have. And so having more than one set of eyes working on the transaction is really important.
So it was real interesting to hear you say that as treasurer, you're not signing any checks.
No.
Because I think that's the kind of default assumption that people make is, well, of course the treasurer is going to sign the checks.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you insisted that if you're going to be counting the money,
right,
then somebody else is going to be writing the checks. Now, I guess that could be reversed, right? Like you could write the checks and somebody else would count the money. Is that
correct? Yeah, I think that's important, Craig.
And it's not that Catherine didn't write the checks. She didn't
sign the checks.
So she would still prepare the checks, but with the receipt and the
invoice
itself, present it to the two people on the parish council that would be signing them, so that she would look at it, and then two other people would look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the monthly report to all of the parish council members of all the checks we've issued.
So it's so much like your last gentleman, the lawyer, risk. So what's the risk here? The risk is that the cash comes in and it doesn't get to the bank. What's the risk here? That we write checks to the wrong people. So you're trying to mitigate the risk that those transactions will not be the way that they should be, right? And so by mitigating the risk, you put together a process flow that includes more than one person, goes through a series of steps of checks and balances.
Right.
So there's more than one set of eyeballs on a single transaction.
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming your policies and procedures are documented.
Correct.
Right. So if you were on vacation or something of that nature, there would be somebody else that would be prepared to step in the role and do it.
Exactly. We were on vacation on Sunday because we were here.
So all kinds of mischief could have happened at St. John.
Well, not all kinds of mischief happened at St. John, but there was phone calls back to us to ask us how to handle a couple transactions.
There you go. Okay, well, that's good to know. And actually, that's a blessing, right? Because you'd rather have them ask the question than make a mistake, and then you have to undo that mistake.
Right. And we also have what we call a board of auditors, and that's a group of lay people that are nominated and voted into this office.
Right.
And they come in and they do what we would call in accounting speak a agreed upon procedure. So they say
agreed upon procedure. So like they can do an appendectomy or maybe a knee surgery or something. Okay.
Sure.
All right.
And so they agree what organ they're going to take out, and we decide if that's what we want them to take out.
There you
so
go.
they between the treasurer, myself, and the board of auditors, we decide how many transactions they're going to look at, and then they make the selection, and I will pull all that information for them. So if they want to look at 6 bank reconciliations during the year and pick the 6 months, I will pull those and give them to them. And then they want to look at 24 checks that are paid. They pick the numbers, and I will show them, including all the supporting documentation. So the Board of Auditors then prepares a report in their capacity, because they're not external auditors.
Right. They're not real full-blown auditors.
Full-blown auditors. They prepare a report that goes back to the council and then goes to the General Assembly, and it gets filed away then, because we're a small enough parish. The cost of going out to an external audit firm to have that done is an extraordinary expense to our parish. So with the aid of the Board of Auditors, we're able to alleviate that cost to the church at St. John's.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's easy for us lawyers to say we're always recommending that all parishes and all parish institutions go through a full-blown audit or at least a review, something that, gets an extra independent set of eyes to look at it. But again, we have to recognize that we have a wide variety of parishes with a wide variety of circumstances. And to be honest with you, I mean, not all small parishes are blessed to have people with your academic backgrounds as well as your professional backgrounds, actually working with, Big Four accounting firms and other consulting firms in that regard.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the integrity, transparency, and accountability that you exercise with the parishioners. How do you communicate to the parishioners you can trust what happens at St. John?
So I think that comes from the honest conversation that I have with them when we put the budget together, we present it to the parish and the General Assembly.
So as treasurer, that would be something you would do, right?
Yes, and I did. I prepared that. I also present the financial statements for whatever period the General Assembly is falling in. So I think last year it fell right after September 30th. So it was for the 9 months ending September. And I think having that honest conversation, answering questions, answering it in non-accountant speak. And I think that gave them, and I think it gave, at least I know it did, a lot of our parishioners comfort. Right. And then just, they want to know, how are we doing? How do you feel like we're going to turn out for the year? And giving the honest opinion, I'm a cheerleader. Yeah, we're going to do great. We're going to be fine. And actually we were. So it was great to come back 6 months later and say, hey, remember when you asked me? Well, yeah, we finished. We did it. We came out strong. And thanks to all of you guys, because you have the confidence to give me, not to give me the money. You have to give me the money.
That's true.
To send the money to the church, and it's going to go into the right bucket. At the end of the day.
That raises an interesting question, because, one of the conundrums that a lot of parishes face is the budgeting process. I mean, it's kind of like the old dartboard on the, dart on the dartboard. Like, how do we do this? And I have a real hard spot, and I'll confess this on the outside. People who've listened to my program know that I have a real problem with the way we do budgeting in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese. I think it's a joke, because we all look at last year's budget and tweak it, and then the previous year we looked at the previous year, and the previous year we looked at the previous year. So the first and only budget that was ever created at your parish is whoever created the budget, right? As opposed to looking at it and really having the ministries drive that process. That said, do you ever get involved in doing projections and other than the budget? I mean, do they come to you at September and say, hey, listen, do you have a pro forma that tells us how we're going to do by year end?
I have for my clients, but not for my church.
We have, however, at the parish assembly where we propose the budget, we have the current year to date, and then an estimate or a projection, if you will. For the rest of the year, and give them some kind of an idea where the operating fund is going to end up.
Okay.
Now, we also report to the parish a combined financial statement in a couple different ways. One is more just a cash accounts, and the other one is more of a financial statement that you might see, like the Archdiocese with our assets, liabilities, net assets, and then our revenues and expenditures. And of course, we're on a cash basis. We're not accrual.
Right.
But so we give the parishioners quite a bit of information, but we do try to tell them when we propose the budget and adopt the budget in our fall General Assembly where we think we're going to be.
Okay. Well, that's real helpful. I'm sure, and that goes a long way to creating integrity out there, because you're just basically giving them a roadmap, so to speak, in that regard.
Right.
What are some of the other best practices that you think parishes ought to consider or engage in from, financial perspective or accounting perspective or things of that nature?
From our standpoint, we were talking earlier today about endowment funds, and we separated out the funds that we received from bequests and memorials and started accumulating those. And once they became enough money, if you will, we transferred those to the trust department at the bank, who handles our investments.
Okay.
It's, you
have investment guidelines for them to work
we have
off
some
of.
Basic guidelines is to make money. Yeah.
That's it, huh? All right.
Right, but I think so. The advice I give to my not-for-profit clients: you need an investment strategy plan, right? And it needs to be, because your endowment is going to be into perpetuity, right? It's not for today and now; it's for the future. And it wants to live 100 years, or it wants to live 50 years, but it wants to live and grow. And so I've seen some really bad investment policies where they're only invested in T-bills, and then they're eating themselves alive. The corpus is dwindling. So I firmly believe everybody should have an investment strategy plan for the amount of risk that they can tolerate, for the growth that they want, and similar to what we looked at today, if it's the 5%, if it's the Yale plan, whichever plan you want to pick for your payout, make sure it's a tried and true payout plan, and then live with it, and live with it for quite a long time, because you can't keep changing your investment strategy plan every time the market dips, because that's not what you're there for. And then have investment advisors. When it gets large enough, split it up and give it to 2 or 3 investment advisors. Go out for an RFP. Look at them on a regular basis. Do the dog and pony show. Have them come in and tell you how they handled your money this year, and compare them against each other. Because if one doesn't do well, you can fire them and go to somebody else. You should never, ever think that you're stuck with your investment advisor, even if it's your cousin Vinny. It's got to be somebody that's got the best interest of everybody in mind. I liked how you guys talked today about having
conflict of
interest policy. Thank you. That is so important. So Craig and I are sitting on the parish council. Neither one of our accounting firms is going to handle any of the work that we need to take care of in the parish. Right. We would have a conflict of interest if we did that. But for an investment strategy plan, you need to. It's hard sometimes, because you do have some great investment people that are working in your firm, working for firms in the local area that are going to your church that are parishioners. So you have to be very conscious of that. That's why you go out for RFP. You do it in a stewardship mind, right? You have a fiduciary responsibility for the money, and you do it in a logical method.
Right.
So investment strategy plan, very important. Legacy planning. I could go on and talk for days on how important it is for legacy planning, right? The word one of the words in our Congress is legacy, right?
Right.
Well, we need to plan for the church's legacy, but we also have to plan for the constituents' legacy, right? Where do they want to leave their money, and how long do they want it? Not just for their funeral, but for the life of the church. And so that planning has to be there. And so I think where we fall short, and I can tell you that in Omaha, is we do not do the plan giving. We've talked about it. I have talked about it, but it's just not gotten off the ground. Everybody kind of runs the other way when we say we're having a planned giving meeting. So we're going to call it something different. And we're going to let Philotikos do it, because everybody comes to a Philotikos meeting now. And I have to...
Their colludi are better than your parish colludi, I can tell.
I have to give a shout out to our Philotikos chapter for Omaha, Nebraska, because they won the Agape Award today for the Denver Metropolis. So I have to give a shout out. So they're doing something right. So we're just gonna ride their coattails out on this and have them do the philanthropy, since that's what they're so good at, right? It's in their name, and have them talk about the legacy plans.
All right. So let me tell you, I'm looking at you, Craig, and Catherine made a couple of mistakes just now. and she doesn't realize it yet. Because she doesn't know me as well as you know me, right? So she just said, I could go forever talking about X. So you know what that means, right?
She's going to end up talking.
She is going to be on a separate program that the both of you are going to be on in the near future, and we're going to go in great depth in this, because honestly, one of the things we hear over and over, and we heard it in the programs today, is that if the church doesn't create the sense of integrity, transparency, and accountability, trust is a difficult thing to get through. And we've got to get back to the point where everybody says, I can worry about that company or I can worry about that person, but I'm never going to worry about my church. And the other thing, for those of you that are listening, that Catherine was referring to, and you'll see more about this soon, today here at the Clergy-Laity Congress, we did a panel, and my next guest was on that panel. We're going to talk to him a little bit about it. But we did a panel specifically focused on creating planned giving programs at parishes and endowments. And this is going to be a major priority of the Archdiocese in the year and hopefully several years to come, helping the parishes, as Catherine said, create that legacy mindset and give them the tools and the resources and the support and the training, so that you don't have to worry about bringing up that conversation or just delegating it to Philiptikos, that you all will have all the tools and practices ready to do that. So that's what she was referring to, and you'll be seeing more coming out about that after the Clergy-Laity Congress, and my next guest is going to talk a little bit more about that. So that's great. All right. Any last pieces of advice? I mean, because we know we're going to do a new program. We know I'm looking at Mr. Maddox over there, the CEO, and I'm saying, Mr. Maddox, we're going to be doing a whole program on integrity, transparency, and accountability with 2 experts, and he's giving me a thumbs up, because this doesn't just apply to the parishes. It applies to every church organization, every church institution. It requires every church ministry, whether it's Philiptikos or whether it's an endowment or if it's a cemetery fund. It doesn't matter. All of the diligence that you all are implementing at St. John is really the kind of thing we need to talk about. But I'm going to give you one last shot to say anything you want to say, either about the legacy piece or about going forward, before we get you on the next program.
Okay, so let's talk about how we're managing our accounting. So if we're still using Excel, we shouldn't be doing that. If we're still using
that's
pencil
the only
and
thing
paper,
I know how to use.
We shouldn't be doing that. We should be moving. I know most of our parishes are using QuickBooks. QuickBooks is a great platform to use, great software.
It works,
but
right?
you should also be thinking, if you're a bigger church, bigger organization, multiple funds, you should be looking at some real serious software. And don't be afraid to make an investment in software. Fund accounting, which is what we work in, is serious accounting. Yes. And you can't just make it up, and you have to really have the right software. So I would recommend a Sage product, a NetSuite product, depending on the size and number of funds that you have and what you want to record and take care of. So the accounting software is really important. And then, does it connect and talk to your donor software?
Yes.
Does it? It's so critical, because otherwise you're wasting time. Then the next thing I would do is, if you can, automate as much as possible. Automate the transactions so that they're repeated, and they take out the human element, you take out the human error, and then we do something that's not just sitting around looking at checks all day, but we're looking forward. Right. So we're doing the forecasting. So plug and play a software into whatever you're using, like a Giraffe, which gives you analysis and dashboards and future and forecasting and budgeting, so that all of this is easier, so that the parish council and the treasurers are really doing something meaningful, instead of just looking at transactions and doing debits and credits all the time.
And Catherine, what you just talked about is so critically important. I mean no disrespect. My father was an immigrant to this country, worked in the restaurants. Their accounting system was a shoebox and cash, right?
Sure.
You know, and this is one area where over the last 100 years, our archdiocese has advanced so dramatically in terms of the capabilities that it can offer its parishes, but also the level of sophistication of the things and the products and the tools that you're using, like you're talking about. And we need to be prepared to continue that transition, so that we're never again behind the 8 ball, so that no one has any doubts about what we're trying to accomplish.
Exactly. It makes you look like you know what you're talking about.
Right.
And that's what's important.
Well, you
Trust.
actually do sound like you know what you're talking about. So if you don't, you're the best illusionist I think I've heard in a very, very long time. But when Craig Clausen first introduced me, I said, where in the world have you been hiding this asset? You know, because we're going to take her on the road, my friend. There's too many parishes and too many church institutions that need her guidance and her assistance, with a little bit of a push and a help from you, okay?
She's been a wonderful asset for us, and we're happy to share.
All right, well, that's good.
Thank
and
you.
one last thing, you can make one plug for St. John in Omaha, Nebraska.
Come to our festival, August 19th, 20th, and 21st.
All right. I thought you were going to talk about the tours because I think that's pretty cool.
Well, if you come to the festival, you get a tour.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we do have tours. We're the #1 attraction from the Omaha Chamber of Commerce, and they recommend tour buses that pass through Omaha. Before pre-COVID, we were well over 1,000 guests a year, feeding them and dancing for them.
Oh, I say 2,000.
Dancing.
2,000.
And then we
COVID.
We give them COVID hit.
But we feed them
we
and
feed
cultural.
them, and we give them a tour of the church and a brief history of our parish, but also of Orthodoxy. So we have an opportunity to reach many, many people that haven't heard. They have no idea. They think we're Orthodox Jews.
Right. And that's the reason why I wanted you to tell that story, because I'm challenging you parishes out there to think about the opportunity of creating an invitation process to bring people into your church. You go the extra mile to feed them, and that always is a wonderful exercise, but it gives you a unique opportunity to share the beauty of the Orthodox faith with them. And you do it in a way that is very comfortable, is very relaxing, is very enjoyable, and yet at the same time you're evangelizing. And so I think that's a credit to the work that y'all are doing at St. John, and I hope that everybody listening will take that opportunity on. So, thank you very much, Kathy. Thank you very much, whatever your name is.
Yes.
Craig and I have known each other. How long? We don't even, the statute of limitations has expired on how long we know each other, right?
Many, many years.
Many, many years. So we're going to take one more short, quick break, maybe if we can, and then we'll bring in our final guests here, but certainly not the worst of our guests here. We've been building and building and building up over here. So if you'll bear with us for just one more second, and we're going to close out real strong with Father James Corderas and Dr. George Koulianos. Thanks so much, and we'll be back in just a second.
Bill will be right back, but the lines are open if you want to ask a question or offer your thoughts. The number is 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO.
New from Ancient Faith Publishing.
Secret Turning, a collection of short stories by Stephen Signori. So, I'm out in the lot at Auto Heaven, and up comes Father Nahum from behind, grabs me, gives me a kiss, and tells me he's happy to see me. Wearing his worn-out dungaree bib overalls with the beat-up straw Stetson, pulling his wire basket, going shopping on the avenue. How old is Nahum anyway? Sharky asked. Older than he acts, Lefty said. To be ready said, yeah, and younger than he seems. So he says to me, Theodore, the church is much better when you're there. It's not the whole family when we don't see you. You know, God misses his children, and Nana Olga misses her son.
Now available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook at store.ancientfaith.com.
Stewardship Calling is back, and we are ready for your call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-AF-RADIO. Here again is Bill Marianes.
Welcome back to Stewardship Calling Live and Ancient Faith Radio, coming to you live from the Marriott Marquis in beautiful New York, New York. Here, where we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, not only celebrating the past, but actually looking towards the future. And as you see, we've done a widespread conversation here. We've talked about the technology. We've talked about the ministry. We've talked about how we can reach people through bridging through the uses of different technologies. We've spoken about some of the specific ministries that really are unique opportunities to serve people through the homeless ministry and others. We've talked about how the Archdiocese has worked so diligently of late to really improve and really substantially modify to excellence the programs regarding youth protection and accounting, financial integrity, transparency, and accountability. But we thought it was really important to kind of end on two other really critical points. And so the first, they're coming on here together over here. So I'm going to introduce them together, but I'm going to ask them separate questions over here. So some of you may remember that a program that we just recently concluded about our family wellness program included my very dear friend, Dr. George Koulianos, who is from Mobile, Alabama, and he is one of the leading reproductive doctor specialists out there. He's telling me to keep it down low, but I I am so proud of the work that he does and the service that he does and serving the community and the city there in the various different volunteer and other capacities through the medical and the medical bar association, right? If it were only, but through the medical association down in Mobile. And George has been instrumental in helping manage the Lilly Foundation grant that has really done a great job of studying the development on our clergy wellness and things of that nature. And the other guest at the same time that we're going to be talking to, it's kind of a bridge over, and then there's a separate topic with Father James Corderas, who himself has a prior life, a good one, with a business background and an MBA, and so he's a brilliant business mind in his own right. And then he got called into the ministry, and not only does he serve as a prosamino at a church, but for a very long period of time, he has been the director of stewardship, outreach, and evangelism here at the Archdiocese, which is a lot of hats to wear. And he was instrumentally involved in a program that we did today on planned giving that you heard us allude to today, and he's helping to spearhead a program that we're dealing with on effective parishes. So, welcome, Dr. George. Welcome, Father Jim. You got the closing spot, so you better nail it now. No pressure here, right? So, George, tell us what's been going on since we last spoke about the family initiative, and particularly some of the things that you all have been working on here in connection with the Clergy-Laity Congress and some of the other programs that you've got coming on down the pipeline.
Thank you, Bill. What we worked on up to and during Clergy-Laity is creating awareness for the uniqueness of the presbytera and the challenges that she faces as a presbytera, as a mother, as a wife, and are creating unique programs that are going to be launched here in the very near future. Starting in August, we'll have a financial wellness series that will start in August and will run through February that is presbytera specific. And we're trying to get as many women speakers as we can. And we're even going to deal with topics that relate to widowed presbyteras as well.
Great.
So it's a very unique program.
Great.
It's never been done in the GOA before. So we nailed that down after we last had our radio program.
Okay.
And we are progressing on our presbytera peer learning groups.
Oh, awesome. Talk a little bit more about how that's going on now.
One of the most challenging aspects of being a presbytera is the loneliness.
Yeah.
It's lonely being a presbytera, and although anecdotally we knew it, we didn't know it objectively, and now we've actually measured it.
Yeah, the empirical.
Metrics.
Yeah.
We have empirical data.
Right.
And we're creating these peer groups where presbyteras will be able to confide with other presbyteras and actually have measurables as well. We're going to have an independent third party monitor the before and after experiences.
Oh, really?
For the presbyteras to see how we've progressed, how each learning group progresses to better tailor the programming going forward.
Okay.
So it will be something that will be a learning exercise for the leadership to make better programs going forward.
Right.
That'll launch probably in the fall, roughly. We'll have train the trainers, and then after that, the peer learning groups will start. But those take time to gain traction.
Yeah.
It takes a while to feel comfortable enough to open up.
Right.
And those are the two big things. What happened here at Clergy-Laity is we've actually gotten some wonderful interest in some of the upper levels of leadership at the Archdiocese in terms of presenting that data now to the lay leadership at the highest levels of our Archdiocese, which we've had a tough time kind of getting to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a wonderful opportunity going forward.
So they've embraced that and said, let's get this story out here. This is important.
Correct.
Story.
And it's amazing. In addition to our program that we had for presbyteros and for clergy here, where we had 200 people attend, it was very well received as part of the Archdiocesan Benefits Committee. The Clergy Family Initiative was brought up at the Finance Committee.
Yep.
And it was brought up at the Charter.
Yep. That's the one thing I was going to say. I mean, to me, it's not like you have a 100-year anniversary dialogue about the past charter, the new charter often, but the fact that it was not only brought up once, it was brought up several times.
Correct.
I mean, not only did the president of the National Sisterhood talk, not only did several other presbyteros talk, but several of the laity and a couple of clergy talked about the importance of it. I mean, if you were going to pick like one of the top 10 topics that were discussed as we start to envision what the charter will look like, I would say that the role and the relationship of presbyteros and the health of our clergy was one of those top topics.
If there's a building block the fundamental brick and mortar of a Greek Orthodox parish, it's our clergy.
Right.
And their families.
Right.
Plain and simple.
Well, but you've done a really good job of bringing that interest, that issue to the forefront, right? I mean, and that's really important because you've been, we talk about the Gospel of Matthew, shining the light in the darkness. You've been shining the light on this issue and taking the time to manage it empirically.
Well, it's our whole team. We're very, very fortunate. They have a wonderful team with Father Kostas Soteris, with Father Al Gimas, with Father Jim Mochetes, with George Kaloutis, with Presbytera Mary Christie, and on, and now Presbytera Maria Antokis. And as the circle grows, awareness grows, and the ideas grow, and we flourish, and we feed off each other and create something that's even better than what we envisioned in the beginning.
Yeah, and I just got to tell you, I mean, I owe you some data about the last show that we did together, but I will tell you that I've gotten at least 2 or 3 emails, I've got to go back and look at it, from people that are not clergy, not presbyteros, not family of clergy, saying, we did not realize how significant the challenges are, and we realize that we need to step up our game. So y'all are doing an amazing job of bringing that light forward. And so I think, I'm always soliciting people to come on the next program. So you're going to have to tell me when's the next measurement point that you'll have data to see the effectiveness of your cohort programs. I mean, any of the programs for that matter. I mean, when's the next point that you think we should have a update?
I'm not sure, but I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, because I don't want us to lose the momentum here. I mean, you all have done a great job, and it's too easy to get this important issue kind of put back into the shadows here. And I think, as you start to get these teams together, I think you're going to start to see some amazing results. And
God willing.
And I think so. Anything else, Dr. George, that you want to share? Anything in the farming area that you want to share? For those of you that don't know, not only is he an incredible doctor, but he's a gentleman farmer. And so he sends me he texts me these photographs of these big vegetables that he's pulling out his camera right now, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry that this is not a video program, because he would be showing some mega fruits and vegetables that he grows, and he's conscripted his children into doing that.
Slave labor. It's a great thing.
Let me see. Let me take a look at this. Oh, look at that. He's got, I don't even know what these are, cucumbers, and there's a tomato.
Farm logo.
That's your farm logo?
Yeah, DK.
DK. Okay.
Yeah, that's by Kumbara.
That's perfect. That's beautiful.
That for us,
All right. Well, we're going to have to, next time you're on the program, we're going to have to advertise your logo over there so we can take a look at that. So that just proves, ladies and gentlemen, that even though God has given you the gifts and skills and talents, abilities to be a doctor, you may be called to help work in the mission field of helping support our presbyteros and our clergy, and you may actually be called in the mission field of becoming a farmer. So, George Koulianos, thank you very much, brother. God bless, and it's so good to see you. So now I'm going to turn the attention to kind of close out the show with my good friend, Father James Corderas, who, as I mentioned before, is, in addition to being Proestamonos, I say long time. I don't even know how long it's been. How long have you been chairman of the Stewardship Outreach and Evangelism Committee?
Since 2003, January 2003.
2003. So you should have your own 10th anniversary celebration coming up soon, right?
Or maybe they'll be sending me away. I don't know.
Yeah, you ain't getting it out of it that easy, dude. I'm just telling you. So, Father Jim, tell us a little bit about what your department does, and then I want to get into a little bit more about today's conversation about plain giving and endowments. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to kind of end up by just kind of foreshadowing the effective parish assessment process that your department's supporting.
Just some quick institutional history is that the Clergy-Laities of 2002 and 2000 called for home missions to replace what was lost when the mission center went under the Council of Bishops, whatever we call the
Assembly of Bishops.
Assembly of Bishops, thank you. So Bishop Kushel, Bishop Dimitri handed it over to me when we started the Department of Renewal, Outreach, and Evangelism, which was then shortened to Outreach and Evangelism. But our mission was to reinvigorate the faith of active Orthodox, look at planting new churches, offer our faith to America. But we realized at that time we had to get fertile ground in the parishes before we brought people in. And in 2009, stewardship was added to our responsibilities, which is a good fit because it's all about building up the body of Christ and adding to our membership, not just growth for the sake of growth, but true healthy parishes do grow, and creating healthy parishes. So we've been trying just to put tools in the hands of the parishes, because that's where the rubber hits the road. That's the front line.
Yes.
Where everything happens. There's no shotgun approach. It's person to person, eye to eye.
And that's one of the unique things about your department and your ministry from some of the other ones, right? Because your primary, I'm going to use the word customer, and I know in church world we don't like to use that phrase, but your primary customer is the parishioner. It's the parish. It's not yes, the metropolis, and yes, the other institutions, yes, the organizations, but you have to be accountable to the parishioners and be effective for the parishioners. Otherwise, your message is going to be lost.
The front line is the ministry leaders and the clergy in the parishes. Absolutely. That's where we want to put our resources and our training in their hands, because they're on the front lines. They're the ones that are having the contact. And there's no shotgun approach to outreach. It's got to be a person-to-person.
Yeah, it's hand-to-hand combat. The other thing that your department does really well, and I think this is a value to think about from other parishes, is that you do really good work with graphics and design, and your materials look very professional. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to parishes who, are sometimes struggling to find, somebody with the skills to do that. And, certainly any PowerPoint presentation I've ever put together looks like amateur hour. But seriously, the quality of the work that you all produce is the kind of work that a parish can then use very comfortably and know that they've got professional content.
Right. We provide it in two ways. We knew we had to up our game because we're out there with all different kinds of literature. Our literature had to look professional, but it also had to be customizable. Right. So we offered it in two ways: finished form and in customizable form. So parishes can take it, our graphics and our text, and make it their own, apply it to their parish, or they can just take it turnkey the way it is, if they don't have the time or the staff to do that.
And that's what I want to make sure everybody hears, and that is that these materials are available to you in both formats, and you can actually take it and customize it in the way you want. Today's program, and we're going to segue to that, we actually showed the planned giving brochure that was produced and how you could just take it and use it. And then we showed one parish that had actually taken it and customized it a little bit. They put their own name on it. They put their own look and feel to it. But it was all of the essence and all the professionalism.
That's when we are happiest, is when they send us their brochure that they took and created from our materials. That's when we know we're really working together.
Right.
And there is no plagiarism in the Greek Orthodox Church.
Yeah. I mean, there's zero copyright protection here. It's all open for everybody. So talk a little bit about the wonderful panel that you helped spearhead today with regard to planned giving and endowments and the new initiatives that the Archdiocese is going to be doing to help parishes create these planned giving endowments for them, not for the Archdiocese, not for the metropolis, but to literally help strengthen the parishes.
Yeah, I was really pleased because Elaine, our finance person, really stressed that this is for the parishes. This is not beyond that or anything above that. It's for the parishes. They're actually allocating funds in the budget to create assistance to parishes to create endowments within their financial systems to receive larger gifts, because I think there's a problem of trust, as you spoke with your earlier guests.
Right.
Trust in our systems, trust that their long-term gifts are not going to go to the electric bill or to fixing something short-term. They want the parish to be there, not just, as I said today, not just so that they can have their funeral there, but so that their grandchildren's grandchildren will have a thriving parish.
Yeah, and I think this is an important thing for everybody listening to this program. Whenever you listen to it, either live or in a podcast version of it, is that you need to be looking out for the material that's going to be coming out from the Archdiocese to help you at your parish now with creating endowments and planned giving. If you want more information about it, you can reach Father Jim, and he's going to give, I know it, but he's going to give it because he's got a better radio voice than mine. He's going to give his email address for you to contact him, and then he can send you a copy of the PowerPoint deck that we use today for the training and materials, as well as an information card for you to identify who within your parish could use more information. So why don't you share with parishioners how they can do that, Father?
Sure. My email is fatherjimk@goarch.org. That's FRJIMK@GOARCH.org.
Can't be any easier than that, can it?
I hope
not. And you can go to the website because it's available on the website.
Right.
And if you just type in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese Stewardship, you get taken right to that page.
Right.
And you can find his contact information and his face, and also you can find a lot of the beautiful brochures and materials. Okay. Lastly, we're partnering together to work on what I think is going to be a really exciting program, and something that, frankly, is going to get its own program here on Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio, and you're going to have to come back for that. So I'm sorry. We're just going to have to work that out on your calendar. But let's talk a little bit about kind of your perspective of how we help parishes become the most effective parishes in the healthy parish, and then I can segue into a little bit more about the EPA process.
This is just right in line with all what we've always tried to do, is find tools to help parishes self-evaluate and find their direction and see themselves more clearly. And I think what you've done with your team that you've put together, and you know, we always had complementary and cooperative ministries, and this is another case where we're able to move forward together cooperatively, because your ministry, it goes hand in hand with ours, to help parishes see themselves clearly. And you're going to have to talk about the mechanics.
Yeah,
but it's something parishes say, oh, we can do that by ourselves, or we know how to do that by ourselves, but 5 years later they haven't done it.
Right.
They really need the analysis, and they need the other person's eyes on them, and the process of accountability, which comes with a program like this.
Yeah, and so what we did was we looked at, like, you know, at over 500 Orthodox parishes, and having completed strategic plans to cover over 26% of Orthodox Christians in America, we got a lot of data, and then we also compared it with other Christian churches and started saying, where are the pain points? Where are the challenge points? Now, to be clear, because Father Jim's department is not in the area of religious education, that's another whole department, we're focusing on the operational side of the house, not the theological or the spiritual. That's critically important. In fact, that's more important in some respects. But we're laser focused on the operational side of the house. And what all the data showed us was that there are 6 pillars of the most effective and healthy Orthodox parish. And they include vision and planning. They include leadership and teams. They include generosity and stewardship. They include the ministries. They include parishioner engagement, and then operational excellence. But underneath those 6 pillars, we found that there were 30 building blocks that actually strengthen those pillars. And so while you can go to your doctor and get an assessment of your personal health, or you can go to your financial planner and find out how your portfolio is doing, what we were struggling with was finding out how can we help our parishes do a empirically based assessment of their effectiveness in these key areas. And so we will be launching through the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese Stewardship Department as a result of a generous grant from Leadership 100, and with our team at Orthodox Ministry Services, a cohort group of parishes. We're looking for at least 2 parishes from every metropolis to be a cohort parish. You will get an effective parish assessment 1 of your 6 pillars. You'll get a detailed effective assessment 2 of the 30 building blocks. You'll get a parish improvement plan and 2 detailed sessions to talk about improvement. And all of this is free. Everything has been taken care of for you through the generosity of the Archdiocese, Leadership 100, and Orthodox Ministry Services. We want to make sure that this is the kind of tool that you can use. So if you think your parish is the kind of parish that could benefit from getting this kind of self-assessment process and supporting best practices, then please reach out to us. You can either get a hold of Father Jim, he gave you his email address, or you can reach out to me at bill@stewardshipcalling.com, and we'll be happy to include you in the effective parish assessment process. Okay, Father, last words before I wrap this show up. Is there any other last insights that you want to offer as you start to think about not just the 100 years in the rearview mirror, but the 100 years in the future?
I want to say that there's been a lot of talk about demographics and trends, and the trends have not been good in recent years for Christianity in the United States. But I have to say that the golden age of this archdiocese lies ahead, not behind us, and that if we do the right steps, which we've talked about on the show, our festivals, people are actually starting to use them for outreach.
Yes.
And we're spearheading a lot of tools that people can use in their festivals to do better outreach, because people that are doing that are bringing in lots of new members.
Right.
And it's just a missed opportunity if you're not. So many things like that that are not complicated or difficult we can do. It's just a matter of laying them out there and putting the tools. So the golden age lies ahead, and parish health and parish growth is the key.
Well, that's great. I mean, in today's tumultuous times, we don't often get a prognosticator who says the golden age is in front of us. So I'm glad to end up on such a positive note. And it really was a testament in today's very long session about what the future charter looks like. It was so reassuring to hear parishes talk about how they're, exactly what you said, using the festivals as outreach and evangelism opportunities, and how they're using their parish charitable ministries as outreach and evangelism opportunities. And as they're starting to look beyond just the four corners or the villages that their families came from in the old country. And that's why it's so pleasurable for you to end. And you didn't know this because you weren't here at the beginning when we started with Father Barnabas and Steve Cristoforo, and they were kind of talking about kind of what this might look like going forward and whatnot, but you've reinforced it here at the end. So I want to thank you for coming on to this special Clergy-Laity Congress edition of Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio. I've alerted you in advance. You got fair warning now. You're going to have to come back on when we do the whole program devoted to the Effective Parish Assessment Program and talk about that. So thank you, Father Jim. And is this your son sitting to my left over here?
This is Christopher Cordero.
Hey, Christopher. So if for those of you that don't know, because this is radio and this isn't TV, I've had a young man with a headset on right next to me, and he's been giving me the thumbs up, down, and the thumbs down sign when I do something wrong. No, actually, he's been a pleasure and a delight to have it here, and I thank you, Christopher, for being so gracious with that. So thank you very much. And so we're going to wrap it up today in this very special Stewardship Calling Ancient Faith Radio program right here from beautiful downtown New York and the Clergy-Laity Congress. This would not have been possible in any way without the extraordinary work of John Maddox, the founder and CEO of Ancient Faith Radio. Because when I first told him that the first Wednesday in July had me in New York, he said, I will get on an airplane and I will bring the studio to the hotel. And sure enough, he did just that. So a very special thanks to our inspirational leader, who some of you may know has allegedly announced that in a year or two or 3 or 5 or 10, he wants to step down, and we've started a search process for his replacement. I'm just going on record to let you know I will not let him retire because he's too valuable, and he's done such a great job building this great ministry. Also, this would not have been possible without our very extraordinary producer right back in the studio in Chesterton, Indiana. We're sitting here at the Marriott Marquis in New York, and Matushka Trudy Richter is taking care of all of the magic, including the callers and getting this on the air and on the YouTube and Facebook platform. So Matushka Trudy, thank you very much for the great work you're doing. I really want to thank all these guests that came of their own volition late at night after in a beautiful city to do this program and to try and share with you a little bit about the extraordinary journey that the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese has been on for the last 100 years, and as Father Jim capstoned it so perfectly, as we look with great attention to a beautiful future, if indeed we will all roll up our hands and get our work done. So if you enjoy any of these Stewardship Calling Ancient Faith radio programs, by all means, you can go to ancientfaith.com, look up Stewardship Calling, and drop down to the date of the program. Today's date is July 6th. If you want to go to stewardshipcalling.com, you can go to the Ancient Faith Radio tab and scroll down to the date. So all of these are available, and they'll be released as a podcast shortly. As I said, the upcoming programs are going to include the Financial Accounting, Integrity, Transparency, and Accountability one that we're going to have with Catherine and Craig, and then a special one with regard to the Effective Parish Assessment, which will probably be the next one. So, Father Jim, we're going to have to get on the calendar over there. But I really want to thank all the special guests. I want to thank all of you who have listened in. And again, remember, the two of the most important days of your life are, first, the day you were born, and second, the day you figure out why. And if you're not already living your stewardship calling, I hope and pray that you will prayerfully discern that which God has called you to do with all the gifts that he's given you, so you can have the most extraordinary second part of your life. Thanks for listening. God bless you. And as always, I pray that you SOTPAETJ, which stands for stay on the path and enjoy the journey. God bless and good night.